do something.
Is it?
I know.
Well, I don't mind that.
Better than you.
This is actually a workshop. Tracy,
He has
this is
more
actually a
authority.
workshop, right?
It's a special meeting.
Call it a workshop.
That's a uniform.
Yes,
That's what they call it.
exactly.
It's not a special meeting.
Special meeting workship.
Which
Okay, we live?
What's the
Yes.
stupid attorney up to now?
Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Special Town Commission Workshop Meeting of April 18th. Can we all stand and say Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? Okay, Carla, let's do the roll.
Commissioner Fessler,
Here.
Mayor Cos,
Here.
Commissioner DeHaasa,
Present.
Commissioner Hurlbert,
Here.
Vice Mayor Magruder.
Here.
Okay, any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Well said. Everyone's got the new draft version of the town manager's job, the commissioners do? Okay. I'll entertain a motion on the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimous. Okay, public comment. So before we do the public comment, this is like a special meeting workshop where we're trying to prioritize the monies that we have. In other words, let's say we have somewhere like $600,000. After we do all our fixed costs of running the town, there's roughly $600,000 left. So some of that money is already earmarked towards drainage and things like that, but we hope to have some money left over so that we can then do some projects that citizens bring up or commissioners bring up. So having said that, do we have any public comment?
$600,000 is the remainder from the budget of running the town.
After fixed costs?
Is there any kind of a listing of what is involved for running the town? How much money is that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Tracy can provide that.
Yeah, you're gonna get a more comprehensive budget at the May 30th budget meeting. This is more of the priority meeting.
You came up with $600,000, so I was wondering if there was a number below that showing what was used to run the town, other than what's left over.
You'll see that on May 30th. It's a
Right, this
very
is-
comprehensive budget
This
that you'll
is,
see.
let's call this an exploratory meeting.
Right.
Because we think we know what citizens want, but you're here to express what you desire. Okay. Yes,
You can open it from the floor, from seating, and do I have to come up there and identify myself?
He had sunglasses on, so he couldn't tell.
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. Well, this may seem like minor little projects, but first of all, we need to get the Beachway crossover open so the public can use it, which I know that Wayne has assured me that they're working on. The other thing on some of the other crossovers need some repair so that if a storm comes along and planks are blown apart, we don't get cited by DEP so that you can't use it. That happened once, but we had a good town manager in the past that got it fixed within a couple days. And Porter Street needs repair. There's broken slats along the edges, which I know you guys have been busy doing the maintenance. There's some plaques in the deck itself that need to be replaced. There's stainless steel screws that are sticking up. Someone's going to rip their foot on it. So if someone would do a thorough workover of just repair, so it's strengthened and hardened, that's the expression they use, FPL. If you harden it against the storm this year, that would be a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Okay, just a note on that. The good news is that we were down to one public works employee actually doing the work that you're saying.
I know.
But now we're allotting money to bring in a temporary
Yeah.
to catch up. And the Beachway project has taken longer than expected due to, I don't even know how to describe it.
Well,
But
they
it
always
should be done in a couple-
paid attention to it, but they didn't do enough because the town manager didn't want to spend more money on stainless steel screws as galvanized screws. I mean, you got to spend a few bucks to get it fixed.
Totally agreed. Any other public comment? Okay, let's,
Betty.
oh, Betty.
I have a problem with those statements. You have your crossovers. Sometimes they're not as sturdy as they might be, but they were well-built. And the big problem is they've changed the qualifications for walkovers, and that slows them up when they have to be repaired. And we might think about that. I don't think it has anything to do with stainless steels or the town manager not looking for them on time. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, action items, agenda item number 1, second reading of ordinance 2019. Carla?
Second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2019-05, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its code of ordinances by amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Officers and Employees, Section 2-26, Authority of Town Commission, to remove the restriction that does not allow additional compensation for employees when performing additional duties for more than one office, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Brian?
Yes, just very quickly, what this ordinance does, it just removes the prohibition in the code that prevents a person from receiving additional compensation when that person is appointed to fill the duties of more than one office.
Okay, public discussion? Commissioner comments?
I'll make a motion. I move to adopt ordinance number 2019-05 as submitted on second reading.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay, this is action item number 2, town manager transition plan. Tracy, you're up.
Yes, as part of the transition plan for the town manager position, I've been working with staff as well as former Commissioner Sloat on a plan to restructure the town clerk's department and distribute the town clerk's duties amongst staff members. Through this process, we reviewed the job descriptions for the administrative staff and also the building official. The transition plan and memo outlining our recommendations as well as the updated job descriptions were submitted in the meeting packages for commission to review. To summarize, our recommendations are to adjust the titles and salaries of staff as submitted to you, adopt the job descriptions for the town manager, finance director, and building and public works director as amended, and also to change the employment status of Ms. Armstrong from temporary to permanent until at least September 30th due to internal policies, state statutes, and FRS laws in order to remain compliant with labor laws. I'd be happy to discuss the transition plan with you further if you'd like, and I believe, do we have Dr. Sloat here as well? He was going to come. I don't see him
Why
now.
don't you tell everybody what Dr. Sloat did with you?
Yes, he went over all of the job descriptions and made sure everything was up to standards. And also we went through all of the duties of the current town clerk, treasurer, human resources, and we distributed those amongst the staff members. We also really looked at the building officials' duties, and he's also doing public works duties at the moment, so we're kind of meshing those together and making him a building and public works director.
Right, and he had experience in this in the private sector, and before he did it for us, he did it for the CRA in Delray Beach. So he's quite qualified, and he was a great help.
Yes.
Okay, public comment? Commissioners?
I've got a couple of comments on Tracy's memo that she was just reading. On page 2, it discusses Tracy Stevens, acting town manager, finance director, town clerk at $108,000. Wayne Cameron, building official, public works director, $89,000. It's important to note that Wayne's position is not a temporary, and salary increase is not temporary until for the 6 months that we're talking with the others. In addition to that, Wayne started, and I guess we can go ahead and talk about salaries right now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Wayne started at 74.5. He's currently at 76,363 right now. The proposal is to take him to 89.9. His merit review is due in June, And so what I'm suggesting is that we go ahead and give him an increase right now to 91,000 and make it effective 5/1 to compensate him for some of the additional work that he's been doing in addition to the building, professional building inspector's position. And then secondarily to that, the maintenance personnel that's been with us since 2010 is currently at 46,180. This gentleman has been doing backflips for us probably for the last 3 months. The items that he's asked to do on a daily basis, he's done those. He's worked Saturdays. He's worked a couple of Sundays. I'm suggesting that we take Billy up from 46,180. His merit review is due in July. I think we should take him up to 51,000, which is a 10% increase, and make it effective on May 1, along with Wayne Cameron's, in order to compensate for some of the extra work that he's done previously. So those are my suggestions as far as salaries are concerned.
Commissioner Magruder, if we did that, would they then also be eligible for another increase on their review
No.
period?
I would give them their merit increase now, and then let them, then their next increase would be in July of next year, 2020. So it's just moving them up, giving them an increase 2 months early to try and compensate for some of the extra work that they've done so far.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think this is a little dangerous, though? I mean, isn't there a different way to give people salary increases?
Well, I'm
as
bringing it up
compared
for
to be-
discussion, so
Okay.
I'm wide open for, what I'm concerned about is that we do recognize the extra effort that these two people have put in for the town for the last 3 months, and that we do some sort of compensation to catch them up to where they are and to bring their salaries up going forward.
No, I agree with you, because what happened was, and I think part of it is because of Jamie leaving, if you remember, after the police got their contracts, we were supposed to look at everybody's salary, and unfortunately, now we're kind of doing it piecemeal, so. So I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying, should we be doing it here, or should we, Tracy or their boss, be discussing after a review, you know, that's all I'm saying.
Well, I think-
So I'm not just saying it's the wrong number, I have no idea.
Right.
It could be low, it could be high, I don't know, yeah.
If I remember correctly in my discussions with Tracy previously, you did a kind of a review of nearby towns and areas to
Yes.
arrive at figures. And as far as Billy goes, since he was actually the number 2, I believe, right? So now he would become number 1, so I agree, he'd be entitled to his 10%. And Wayne, I don't think anyone's quite aware of what additional tasks Wayne's taking on. I don't think we'll see Wayne, and certainly his wife and kids won't see him. There's an entire new sheet of duties that fall under the category of public works. And it has a lot to do with the drainage, the seawalls, the roads, the paving. We also got the sewers discussion beginning. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with, how many people are familiar with Wayne's resume. He can handle all of those. He's got more degrees than I can count. And he's a great asset to the town. We're throwing a lot of additional duties on him that weren't asked of him initially, and we don't want to lose him. So that's how I feel about that.
Including the department reporting to him now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't have a problem with
And a
May
big
1
shiny
or now,
badge.
it doesn't matter to me.
Well, however, Tracy, do you have a suggestion on how you want to handle this, or?
Yeah, if we could make those effective immediately and then also do their reviews as scheduled and figure out how we can work that in. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't give another 5%, but we'd still have to do the reviews, of course.
Well, you have to do the reviews, but you wouldn't need to do a merit increase with the review if they've already had it immediately, as you said.
Right, but we wouldn't want to wait over a year. That's all I'm concerned with, you know what I mean? You wouldn't want to wait a year and a couple months.
So could you revise their review schedule for a year from whenever we make this effective, if we make it effective today and/or May 1st? I don't think there's anything in our personnel policy that says we couldn't do that, I mean.
Yeah, we usually do it based on their hire date, but we could, I mean,
But the
could
one
look
thing,
at that.
Don was bumping to 91 to recapture, so to speak.
Right.
Right,
Well, we
But
have,
so if we do it now,
I
then we
see.
gotta revisit the 91.
Right,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just, and I don't know what the math is.
yeah.
I mean, you get caught in 90s, you know, you do it now, like,
Yeah, well, I was aware that, because of regulations and whatnot, we can't do bonuses.
Correct.
So that's why I
That's
was
correct.
saying that if we just did it, effective May 1, or as Tracy suggested,
Effective
immediately,
immediately.
we just go ahead and increase their salary now, and then when they have their merit review, you just give them a review without an increase because they've already got it.
Okay.
I mean, I would kind of leave that to your discretion on how you want to handle that. But I
Okay.
think the rates are appropriate for the work that we're getting, these two gentlemen are accomplishing for us.
you know, the proposed rates.
Yes.
Yeah.
proposed rates.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'd add to that is I wouldn't tie the town manager's hand for not doing any sort of merit increase upon the review. Whether it was just
Right.
something that was perfunctory or, something that was.
In other words, you could do the review taking into account that you just
Correct,
talked.
right, correct.
I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
Yeah, I think Christine's right. We can't make these decisions here. I mean, we're not
Right.
running the town other than supervising, running the town. So it's gotta be up to Tracy and the interview process.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing here is go back to the original chart here, right?
No, I think you're hearing go to 91 for Wayne and 51 for
No, the 91
Billy.
was to recapture
Right.
if it was effective
Right.
May 1. So we go to the numbers on this chart, and then you do the review when the annual review comes up in June, did you say it was?
No, that's not what I was suggesting. I was suggesting that
Because
that
when-
we do it now,
Yeah.
because if we do it now, it kind of gives them some, you can't say the word bonus, but it kind of gives them a bonus for what they've been doing.
What he's been doing,
If we start it
yeah.
now.
Correct.
Okay.
So go to 91 for
no.
now.
Exactly right. We're talking
Yeah.
about that. Okay, so do we need any more discussion?
Well, are we changing his anniversary date then, or we're not
No,
changing? it?
no, but
Okay,
Tracy's
so we're
going to
just
take
going
into
up to
account
91.
that he's got this bump now when she does the review.
Right,
Right,
And
okay.
51 for.
And
Bill.
51 for Billy.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think we need a
Public
motion
comment?
perhaps. I think we did public comment, no one commented.
We need a motion or just?
Stella?
Public comment at all?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the procedure is on this
Yeah.
workshop, like now you talked about something, if I wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, it's a workshop, so if somebody would like to do additional public comment, yes, let's.
Sorry to yell from the crowd. Stella Cole, 204 Beachway. I just want to impress on the commission that these people we're talking about are really, really valuable to us. And give them what they're asking for now. And I think Tracy, in my opinion, should just review them and give them their 5% or 3% or 10%, whatever, because it's very hard for us to keep really good people here. And I know that some of them are being underpaid as it is. In today's, thing, it's hard to keep good people, so I would just advise you to do that. Thank you very much.
I think you got somebody else. You want to give them all cell phones?
No. Yeah, can we pay for their cell phones? That's a big savings. Okay, so, I'm just Janet Shines, 111 Dolphin. So, just did some math. I was trying to figure out and follow you, Mr. Magruder. So, Wayne's now at 76,353. It was proposed to go to 89, and then you said with the merit 91, which is only $100 raise, unless I'm doing my math wrong. $1,100, right? So I'm just looking at a typical merit raise on what his salary would be, and it would be higher than that. So I'm just kind of gonna do the math here and say if he was given this adjustment to 89.9 and then you went into a merit review, you would get more than $1,100. So I would encourage to let Tracy do that, kind of backing up Stella's commentary, to see that she can give him a merit raise on top of that 89.9. I just think that's fair.
You're not going to get any argument from me. but
Okay.
you can work.
Thank you.
All set? Okay, so let's clarify what numbers we're talking about. Tracy?
91,000 for Wayne and 51,000 for Billy.
Okay. And
And then the others, which are town manager, myself, 108, And then Jean Hallahan, the treasurer, 68,000, Carla, 45,000, and Kathy, 37,112.
Right, and the only permanent one, for lack of a, permanent ones, for lack of a better term, are Wayne and Billy. The rest are till September 30th.
Correct.
Okay, so does anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Oh,
Yeah. Do we have a proper?
yes.
Okay.
I'll suggest to move to adopt the job descriptions as presented and to authorize the town manager to adjust the salaries and title changes for staff as outlined in the staff memo and to change the employment status of Carla Armstrong from temporary to permanent effective immediately.
So moved.
And that is the change in the, I guess, the change in the salaries on top of the staff memo, course, correlate to the other two changes that you all mentioned here. That's part of your motion, correct? I mean, part of your motion.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank everybody on staff. Okay, the fun part. Goal setting. This would be presented by Tracy.
Yep. So the main purpose of the goal-setting workshop is for the town commission to determine its fiscal priorities for FY '20 on capital and big-ticket items that are over and above the fixed costs, as you had alluded to, Mayor, of the town before the budget is crafted. The special meeting format gives the commission the opportunity to hear from staff and the residents on various issues and review options and costs in order to develop the consensus on the fiscal priorities for the town. Once the fiscal priorities are set by the commission, staff will have a better understanding at that point as to how to craft your budget for the coming year. Staff members have met on several occasions over the past several months and had thorough discussions, and we have collectively created the attached draft of your priority list for your consideration, along with backup information for the capital item requests. In addition to discussing the staff priority list, commissioners should also consider whether the staffing levels are adequate at this time, whether or not the commission wants to develop the 5-year capital plan and commit to funding that over the next 5-year period, whether there is an appetite to either raise the mill rate, keep it the same, or lower it. And then also whether you would consider utilizing reserve funds to keep the mill rate down. Also, you'll need to discuss the potable water infrastructure and whether you would want to give that to Boynton Beach in the future when they discuss the new contract, or whether you want us to keep that infrastructure. Those answers to the questions will give us an idea on how to craft your budget for the FY '20 period. I would suggest going through the staff priority list first and coming to some sort of consensus on how much to fund for each item that we submitted.
Do you want to go off the sheet or off the Word document?
Yeah, if you want to go through the sheet that we submitted to you.
Would there be a way to project this?
Which sheet are you talking about, by the way?
It's, I hope you can read it, though. It's gonna be, there we go, right there, Carla. Right there. Can you see it?
It's right behind me.
It's this one.
Small one. Right, and then we changed.
There we go. Great.
So I guess the problem, Tracy, is we have the Word documents that won't agree with do the sheets that are in here with the descriptions go in the same chronology? No, right?
No, not really.
Okay. So,
We've marked the items, high priority, medium priority, or low priority as a, staff discussions too.
okay, so I guess what you're gonna have to do is like, if, let's, the Woolbright Detention Area Maintenance, you're gonna have to then refer us to where in this, 40-page document that is. So where is it? Unless you wanna go through the documents and then cross-reference to this.
Well, maybe you would have the town
No,
engineer go
no,
through that.
Phil, it's in here.
No, I was pointing to Peter. I
Yeah,
don't know
you
if he
can-
wants to say something
Yes.
ahead of time or not.
Okay.
Good afternoon, all. Peter Burling, 7 Osprey Drive. I don't have a vote, so I'm just here as an enthusiastic participant. But I do want to say there are a couple of things about this meeting that have really taken the rug out from under me. First was, it was hard in the first instance to figure out where the full warning for this meeting was and how it was being characterized. I was told repeatedly that this was a work session at which the people of the town would get to discuss their priorities going forward. Without any insult intended for the staff, it's perfectly clearly a more focused meeting, starting with the staff's presentation of priorities, not the public's presentation of priorities. I have no idea how you want to work your way through it, but I think I'm not alone when I say I came with the expectation that we would have a free-ranging discussion about the things that are of concern to us. I will leave that to your
I think Peter's bringing
deliberation.
up an excellent point, because that's kind of the Word documents versus the sheet. A lot of the things that will be brought up, I believe, are in these documents, but let's follow Peter's suggestion, and we'll open it up to public comment to bring up items that you would like to discuss. Then, after the comment comes up, we can refer to these sheets, because
Certainly.
it might already be on there. If it's not, then we'll add it.
Certainly.
Okay, Peter.
Again, Peter Burling, 7 Osprey Drive. Given the invitation to think broadly about what I want to see for this little town, there are 3 essential areas of concern. First and foremost, I'm sorry, at the age of 75, I'm worried about when the environment and weather is really going to begin impacting this town. And we have no way to control that, of course, but I do think we ought to be thinking seriously about it. We touch on it, and in the past 6 years, I've listened to frequent discussions about this floods, that floods. Well, I'm waiting for the storm that comes bursting through Beachway and floods my little community out. What are we going to do about it? How do we prepare for it? Is there a preparation? I don't know. So there's item 1. Item 2, I think from the moment my wife and I first fell in love with a little lot of land and decided to build here, the thing that was in the back of our mind is, how does this community connect to the, shall we say, burgeoning Boynton Beach to the west? And it is extremely clear to me now that we are going to see impacts in the next 2 to 3 years, or maybe 2 and 3 years, that are going to change the quality of our life here. We are dependent and will become more dependent on them. They are dependent on us for certain things, access to their beach, for instance. Are we going to sit down at some point and have serious discussions about that and how we're going to deal with all of the interactions and interchanges that we're going to have with Boynton Beach? I don't know. They run from what you might describe as the minutia. Do we have healthcare facilities and emergency EMTs here on this island necessary to meet the needs of our population if, for instance, there's a blockage on Woolbright in the bridge zone? I don't have an answer to that question, but that's the small. The large is, what are we going to do with the amount of traffic that their development and the creation of what I would describe as the Grand Canyon of Federal Highway is going to impact us? I don't have a clear image, but I think it's going to clearly have an impact. Which brings me finally to something that happened to a dear friend of mine just last week, and it's largely because we aren't paying attention to some of the traffic hazards. Now, I understand the state of Florida, the county of Palm Beach, and this municipality may have jurisdiction, but there are places and intersections in this town which are frankly deadly. And Woolbright, Beachway, and A1A is one of them. We got very lucky last week that a citizen of this town wasn't severely injured, but I would guess, Chief, that it was a close thing. Certainly the photography demonstrated. And I've known for 5 years, you pulling out from Beachway, you can't see to the south. There could be a dump truck coming along with a load of stuff from an Alapan, and he doesn't have a chance in hell of stopping, excuse my French. I'd like us to think a little bit about those issues. Traffic flow, what's safe, where is it safe, what isn't. And with that, I thank you for your attention.
So the two things, the environment and the weather, as we get into the sheet that's above you, there will be a lot of that addressed, but absolutely feel free to bring up other items underneath that category. And on the population explosion in Boynton Beach, that's a huge concern to me, and I believe it's to all the commissioners. And we're already beginning to reach out to Boynton to try to do some kind of, let's say, quarterly or biannual meeting with the commissioners of Boynton. We're already beginning to interact with them at a reasonable rate over the sewerage project. So I totally agree with that we need to have some form of cooperation with Boynton. Given that, Boynton's goal, of course, is exactly what Peter said, is to treat Ocean Ridge as its beach. So that's going to be a little bit of a thorny issue. Okay, yes, Betty.
Betty Bingham, 1 East Ocean Avenue. As everyone here knows, my thought of the best way to educate the public is to put fines on things. And I think we have real problems. First, we need to strictly enforce our no parking so that we make the people coming from Boynton have to be bussed into the park as opposed to parking in people's driveways, which they have done at my house upon occasion. And I think we need to find out what the state fines, and even maybe we can put our own fines on anyone who does any destruction to our dunes at all. That is private property. They have no reason to be on them, but the state government, I believe the federal government, are all very strict about what you can and cannot do with the dunes. You may not run in them, you may not lie in them, you may not pick the sea oats. And if you fine a couple of people $1,000, I bet they will soon learn that you leave the dunes alone, like you leave turtle nests alone. I think the commission should start to think about that. That is one way we can control. I want everyone to be able to enjoy the ocean. But I also think they have to have respect for our little town, our private property, and respect for the citizens of this town. And I've had, when I've asked them please to stay off the dunes sometimes, to use very vulgar language, I've been called a rich bitch.
Thank you, Betty. Yes, Stella.
Hi, Stella Cole, 204 Beachway. Piggybacking on, no, I can't remember her name, Betty. Senior moment. I know. I have an issue that I think involves the police department, and I'm hoping that we can kind of come to a consensus. I understand from speaking to the chief that if a private citizen calls, if I see someone on a dune and they're doing something bad and I call the police, they really can't do anything about it because it's not my dune. I do not own any part of the dune. But being part of community, I think if we were able to work together and if everyone who owned the dunes signed off that any of the neighbors in Ocean Ridge can call and then the police can take action. I'm just looking for a way that we could help you and you could help us cooperate with the people. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to who own dunes are said they're more than willing to piggyback on this and do it. So that's something maybe you can try to do, Hal. Thank you.
If I could speak, can I clarify a couple things? There are two issues here. One is people doing destructive things to the dune, which is a state law violation. If you see that, please call. Anyone call. If they are destroying the dunes, we can take an immediate enforcement action if the officer sees it occurring. If they don't, we can do an investigation. The other issue here, I believe, is being brought is whether private property owners want to allow someone to call and have legal standing on their behalf regarding trespass, which I believe I would have to go sit down with our town attorney and discuss the legalities of that under ordinance and statute.
Do you happen to know the fine for destruction of the dune? I remember it was massive. It was like $1,000 or $2,500.
My understanding is, off the top of my head, I don't have it with me,
Yeah.
it's a misdemeanor, punishable up to 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine, depending on what the destruction is. It may be a federal violation, and if it becomes a federal violation, it's taken on by a federal agency, the fine will probably be close to 100 times that.
Okay. Yes.
So Lucy Brown, 23 Harbor Drive South. It's really weird to be on this side of the microphone. Many times I've been on the dais. Well, people come up here and are very angry. I'm afraid they're going to come charging over at me. I'm not angry. However, I am concerned about the dunes, as you are. And I know that the Beachway and all the crossover talk has been to preserve the dunes. And we're concerned about destruction of the dunes. But really, what is destruction of the dunes and who's doing it? I can tell you, if you look in the invasive plant atlas of the US, which you can get to by invasives.org, okay? This is run by the National Park Service and the University of Georgia. And that atlas lists certain plantings as invasive exotics. And these are not things that people come over from Boynton and hurt our dunes. These are things that our dune owners are planting on the dunes. I have seen Cuban buttercups, which are categorized as invasive, planted in front of 5906. There are other cases where people live there, they own the dune, they think they can just plant any invasive species. The Cuban buttercups tend to form a large monoculture, which means they bunch up together and they crowd out the natives, which aren't getting the light, the soil, and the water they need. These dunes, when I moved here 28 years ago, were one of the largest portions of native plants along the dunes on this whole coastline. Now the dunes are largely covered with the Hawaiian scavula, and that spreads. I don't want that to happen with the Cuban buttercups that people are planting because they look pretty. You can plant beach sunflowers, which are native. If we care about the dunes, we need to take care of them. We need to take care of them, not just get angry because someone from another community is going to come over and walk on the dunes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mary Lee.
Marilee Lundquist, 6277 North Ocean Boulevard. I live on a property with a dune, and actually, you know, we're part of the Big Ridge Dune. I have replanted my dune 3 times at least, and each time have had to have permission from DEP. We put a deposit with the town. We have it inspected, and you know, I don't think people are planting invasives. Invasives come, and it is a real problem. With our dune, we are such a ridge that, especially with Sandy and with this year, with high waves, no dune plants. I mean, my neighbor's 50-year-old sea grapes that were huge are just totally taken out by waves. No planting can stop the waves here. I know down at Ocean Club, they long ago had, you know, well, this is a whole other conversation. But getting to the point that you cannot enforce anything unless you have signage to educate people, and I'm wondering, what is the schedule for signage to educate people that this is the town of Ocean Ridge? We're different from Boynton Beach. I don't know how much expense on our behalf that we incur, you know, with beach vehicles, police protection, with the people, you know, that are at the inlet, at the Boynton Beach Public. I mean, we've got over 1,000 front feet of public beach in this town. And we need to preserve what we've got as Ocean Ridge and make sure that people understand this is a different town. That's my question. What is the schedule? We talked about there was a sign at Boynton Beach Public 20 years ago, taken down, and has never been replaced in 20 years. And I'm asking, you know, what's going to be happening now?
I can answer your question.
Okay.
In the budget that's proposed, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 towards signage. So when we get to the end of this budget process, just because it's 12,000 doesn't mean it won't shrink to 3,000 or grow to 20,000. But we have that in there, and then that includes some of the educational signs that you're talking about.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes, Ron. Whoop, I'm sorry.
Luis Stalitsky, 47 Spanish River Drive. I see up there an item called storm drain maintenance outfall repairs. Would you like to discuss exactly what that will encompass?
We actually have sheets on that in here, so if you'll just wait till we get through Woolbright, which will take very quickly, then the storm drainage, and correct me if I'm wrong, deals directly with Spanish River and the pipes and the outfall and the duck bill, correct? So we'll be to that in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Ron?
Hi, I'm Ron Kern, 5510 North Ocean Boulevard. I know I'm on the same subject that was just brought up there, but on a much larger scale. I was thinking about infrastructure in general on Ocean Ridge. You have storm drain on there, of course you have your water system, and eventually the sewer system. And for me, it seems like that needs to be a very high priority because of the basics of living here. And from what I see right now, that seems to be in pieces. I don't see an overall infrastructure plan. I know one thing you can see is that water, we own, if I understand this correctly, Ocean Ridge owns the pipes, but the water is supplied by Boynton Utility. That seems a little bit odd. Either should be one way or the other, maybe. Also, today you have the storm drain issues, and I assume that a lot of those are not just down in that one area, but you have storm drain issues probably in other areas of the town. And the third infrastructure, of course, the one which you know that I'm closely related to dealing with, is the Boynton project to put a line or two, depending upon what timing there is, underneath the Intracoastal Waterway to hook up the island to the Boynton sewer system. That to me is a very large one because it really affects a whole lot of people. And in the short run, you're talking about somewhere around 850 homeowners in the area south of Woolbright and north of Briney from A1A to the ocean. So as I see it, some of the money being spent, I would really like to see some of that money concentrated toward putting those infrastructures, okay, in place in a more coordinated manner. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, like, what you're not seeing on that chart is the bottom half that you can't see is the
Oh.
5-year plan, which, see, number, the very last one, sewer conversion.
Ah,
And some of
I
the,
really- I love it.
we are hiding the
Unbelievable.
5-year
Well,
plan.
that puts us on the same wavelength.
Yes.
Okay.
We got it.
All right, thank you, guys.
Yes, Janet?
Good for you. Okay, so, no surprise, I'm gonna bring back up the Airbnb issue. So we've been about 50 days. I haven't heard or seen anything. I think the town continues to lose its identity. I think it's a safety issue. We've had some real problems in our neighborhood. We've had to call the police with people doing things like setting lanterns on fire and setting them out over people's houses, golf carts they lost control of, backing into the street. I could go on and on. It's a problem. And if you go on any of the sites, you can rent houses here. So I know that we have a law, but we need to help the police be able to enforce it. The burden of proof is so high on the homeowner who's complaining and on the police to reinforce it, that we're going to let the town slip away to Airbnb the way other towns did. It's truly a priority that we figure out how we enforce our rules. So that's the first thing, because if not, we're gonna end up like any of the other beach rental towns that really have a problem, and then you can't get back from it.
If I can interrupt you, maybe
Yes.
Commissioner Bessler would like to speak to that on the bed and breakfast.
Well, I mean, what I was doing was down in Tallahassee trying to fight it, because they're trying to get rid of
I know.
home rule and do that, so I did explain that. As the enforcement, though, I've talked to Hal a few times, it's very difficult to enforce, and, yeah, so.
You can make laws, and they're legal, because we have a grandfather clause to force people to come show their leases, force them to register at town hall. You can make it easier for the police to do it. So I would just ask the commission to really look at that. If we have to bring an expert in, maybe we should reserve some money to bring an expert in.
Janet,
Yeah.
our town attorney is researching this.
Good.
Right,
What we
good.
can do is change the fee schedule, which
Yep,
doesn't solve your
that too.
problem.
Yep.
We're actually in the process of changing, or
Yep.
did we just change it last meeting? We started the process to change the fee schedule, so if you do get caught, it's much more
Much
severe.
higher.
It gets really tricky because you can't mess with the ordinance that protects us.
Understood.
You-
Yep, I'm talking enforcement, right? Second thing is Woolbright, I'm gonna, second Peters, I happen to know the gentleman in question very, very well. And, spent some time and actually talked to a few folks, that I know that are in the USDOT and other areas about what has been used as remedies for other intersections that are dangerous. And they've shared with me, warning signs with a flashing light for approaching traffic on both sides so that they know that there is a traffic light coming. There is not one where we are, but I would like to ask that to be budgeted so that approaching traffic on A1A is aware that there is a traffic light coming. The second thing is to trim the shrubs. I did take some pictures yesterday and while I was walking. It's very hard to see. The third is to change the light timing with a delay so that the green on all sides goes to red and there's a hesitation before it goes green. We right now have, from what I could do, I stood there for 10 or 15 minutes. There's no change between when the light turns green on Beachway and when it turns red on A1A. There's just not enough of a delay. So if someone's already heading, they're gonna keep going. And I've watched people do it leaving Beachway too. It's orange, so
You know,
I'll
if somebody
go.
pushes the crosswalk button, the people heading east, no, the people heading east have a 4-second delay. The people heading west have 0 delay.
Right, there's just not, I think the delays need to be looked at, the timing and the delays need to be looked at, so, that would be it. And then the third thing I think is up there, and we just need to keep thinking about it, not just the storm runoff on Anna, Dolphin and others also have major storm runoffs. I think we need to just go street by street in the town and look and see where we have a problem and
We
then
have
make the
our
fixes.
Town engineer and our second drainage expert here to discuss that very.
Perfect, thank you.
And she did just that and made us a map with a whole bunch of numbers on it, so.
Yes.
If I may. Jimmy McAndrew, 131 Island Drive, Ocean Ridge, Florida, resident of the state of Florida. I didn't have much to say today until I got here. I was just concerned about our initiative to continue to have our own zip code. I think it's become very important. I hearken back to a time when it was in the press that the bridge over the Boynton Inlet was going to be changed into something that would allow more commercial shipbuilding in Boynton Beach. And in listening to you all today, what am I hearing? I'm hearing we're getting controlled by the purse, albeit the sewers, good or bad. The water, they already got. And I'm concerned about the sovereignty of our town. I don't know the legalities of things like this exactly, but I would really emphasize that if we're going to cut deals with that giant next door, we better have a preamble and an escape that is brilliantly worded so they can't take us down. Because numbers count, and we're going to lose there. Thank you.
Very good point. Just so the residents understand what Jimmy's saying, we own the pipes underneath us, and there was a big debate, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago about letting Boynton take over the pipes and maintain them versus us owning the pipes. And we opted to keep and own our pipes for the very reason that you're saying. So it is a, it'll be an ironclad situation if anything occurs.
I think it's gonna be tough to own the sewer pipes, so that's
No,
gonna be
that's gonna be-
difficult. That'd
but the
be
contract-
mega millions of dollars for us.
Apparently by law, they can't charge us more than they charge Boynton, so.
Right, and that would be Brian writing the contract, so.
Yes, Peter?
I just wanted to respond to the excellent question raised by Janet. With regard to the issue of Airbnb and that type rental, another thought might be, and Brian, I'll direct this to you, to what extent can the town use voluntary associations, like a conservation district or some other kind of district, where private landowners could agree to essentially deed to the town their right to do short-term rentals? Would such a thing be enforceable in Florida? And if so, could we start to organize ourselves into block groups where we all sign a deed saying we would agree not to do short-term rentals?
We would not. But the people that are doing it wouldn't sign.
Well,
Well, the only other problem, though, is because even this new law that they want to pass, now, the Senate is going for us and giving us home rule, the House is not. And the House is actually saying that even if you have a condo association and it says you are not allowed to rent, you're stuck if they pass this law. Because, you know, state law supersedes town law. Oh, right. So that's the House bill. Hopefully, it's not going to pass.
And we need to make calls to,
One thing I've heard from the police chief about Airbnb is call. Just keep calling, because I think they were successful after 17 visits, correct? On
We
Ocean?
currently have a home in Ocean Ridge that has been cited
Yeah.
and chose to ignore us, and will be coming back to code enforcement on May 7th at the tune of $500 per day for repeat violation continuous. So our ordinance, when we can get a ruling in favor of us, does work. It's just getting to that point that's
Right.
difficult, so we need your help.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move to the sheet. If you can scroll down to item 1.
Oh, back
I
up.
guess I should say up. scroll.
Back up.
And then Tracy was gonna send us to the Word doc where this is contained. We'll write detention. Where is it? How far in the?
It's probably the fourth page in.
Pump station, wet well rehab,
Fifth page.
Anna Street.
Fifth page.
After the map of flooding.
Right after this one,
Detention area.
Steve. Yeah,
Yeah.
got
Is
it.
Yeah, right after the map of flooding.
Okay, so Lisa Tropepi is here. Maybe you could bring up your fellow expert or introduce him.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So we'll go from top to bottom, and then when we need to go through each individual street, we can do that at your pleasure. The
Right now, we're
Woolbright-
just on Woolbright.
Sure,
then
the
we'll flip-
Woolbright,
then we'll flip the
flip
page.
back and forth. The Woolbright Detention Area Maintenance.
Lisa, could you just give an overview for the folks that may not know what went into this and why you did it and what you actually looked at? I think it's impressive that you looked at the entire township and.
Okay, so, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Why don't you introduce who you are as well and your credentials?
thank you.
We're extremely lucky to have this woman, extremely lucky.
My name is Lisa Tropepi. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Florida. I've been working with you all for close to 20 years. mostly with respect to drainage. However, just so you all know, I am a professional engineer. My focus is civil engineering, which involves drainage, not only drainage, roads, wastewater collection systems, sewer, and water systems, water distribution. And I've brought someone with me, and we can
Did you also have a
introduce him
state
later.
title? You had a state title.
In my younger days, I was appointed by Governor Jeb Bush to be on the DEP's, the Department of Environmental Protection's Environmental Regulation Commission, and I proudly served for 4 years dealing with environmental issues in a bigger way than in a municipal way. It was statewide, and I'm proud to say I was part of the NPDES program that's in here. Anything with an acronym, you know, is government, right? So NPDES, which is a national program, I was involved with that. And I've also was part of what we call TMDLs, the total maximum daily loads. This has to do with nitrogen and phosphorus and environmental issues that affect our surface water systems, our groundwater systems. I helped establish the TMDL program for the state of Florida. That's going to be incorporated in the NPDES program. So I spent a lot of time flying around the state. I've spent a lot of time in the EPA, which is the Everglades Protection Area, and I've dealt with a lot of environmental issues, specifically with the Department of Environmental Protection in those years under Governor Jeb Bush at the time. So I started in this business in 1984, holding a rod. I was called a rodette. So I learned a lot about surveying, and I'm proud to say all these years later, I own an engineering firm with over 30 employees that include professional engineers and licensed surveyors. And most of our business is working with municipalities and governmental entities. Also on my volunteer list of things to do, in a similar town just to the north of us here, I served for 15 years as a commissioner, a vice mayor, and an acting mayor in those 15 years for a town called the town of Palm Beach Shores, which is a small town on the south tip of Singer Island. I was part of the septic to sewer system, been there, done that. We did that in my town. Water main distribution systems, drainage issues, 15 years of doing budgets, and I'm proud to say that I don't have to do that anymore, but I am here to assist you all in making this the most successful year. I mean, we have a lot of items, but we do that every year. We prioritize for the community rating system in the town every year, what our issues are town-wide, and submit them to the state so that we can make sure our residents here in Ocean Ridge have the lowest possible insurance rates. We do that every year. We submit annual reports every year to ultimately to the federal government to comply with the Clean Water Act. It's a mandate that gets done every year. And on the building side, we also check all the site work around the buildings of every home to make sure they comply with all the drainage codes, and also to, as best we can, make sure there's no adverse impacts to adjacent property owners. So we do those inspections as well as monitor the capital improvements as we move forward. So is that good enough? But thank you for that opportunity. Because there's some new people and some folks don't really know the stuff that I've done, and so I appreciate that. So let's talk about drainage. I know we've got other issues like water distribution when we get there, wastewater collection, we'll talk about that after. So the first line item has to do with the detention area maintenance. As you know, well, you have the write-up. In 1999, Hurricane Irene inundated our town. There was major property damage. In 2004 or 5-ish, we got permits from the South Florida Water Management District. And to address issues on the south end of town, over 65 acres of area on the south end of town is now being taken care of mechanically by pumping stations. And we could talk about pumps later, but ultimately that area, that south phase, we call it south phase area, ultimately discharges into what we call the Woolbright Detention Center, or detention area. It's also a passive park, by the way. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Like anything else, you have to maintain your assets. This is an important asset. There's a lot of components to this asset. One of them is the detention area. So every year, we do maintain the detention area. Just recently, we've cleaned out the pipes, the subsurface pipes. We TV'd them, and the good news is the piping system is clean. The Public Works Department, probably every week or so, goes out there and observes the site to make sure that the grates are open so that the water can go into those grates and discharge ultimately into the intercoastal waterway. But as you all know, the detention area is not only used for water quantity issues, it's a water quality detention area, meaning that certain amounts of water will stay in this detention area until it gets to a certain elevation, and then it would outfall out into the intercoastal. So it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it will, depending upon the storm event. So this detention area is about 15 years old, and so we're presenting to you probably the high side of an annual $20,000 budget to do certain things that involve removal of exotic plants, because exotics, invasives, all the time have to be removed. Replanting new vegetation, from time to time vegetation dies. Regrading, sometimes we may need that. And in this case, for this year, staff and I have had discussions about the possibility of tilling those areas, and we've been working with Commissioner Magruder, tilling certain areas because 15 years of dead vegetation sometimes causes areas to be impervious. And let's recharge the aquifer. This is part of the plan. Let's recharge the aquifer. So if we till up some of those areas, introduce some oxygen, and open it up, we could probably see less standing water for longer periods of time. So that's why we have this in here. We've been maintaining this detention area, but we wanted you all to understand the specifics, and that's what this is.
So what were we spending last year and the year before maintaining? Because I remember at one point it was lax, right?
Well, there's always going to be a question as to what have we spent on maintenance of everything.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, it's probably come up and down and up and down. You know, the Great Recession, when we didn't have a lot of money, we probably didn't spend that much money on maintenance. As we continue to grow our funding, as we continue to move forward, you can't ignore maintenance. And so in some cases, there's a little bit of a catch-up. But things that involve the health, safety, and welfare of the public should be high priority. And maintaining this system in all of its components is important for most of the folks in the south end of the town.
So I'll start off the comments. Number one, thank you. And thank you for giving the background about the tilling and making it more impervious and stuff like that, because it all fits together like pieces of a puzzle, and you can't do one if you don't do all the remainder of it. We're talking about minimum 850 households of our town really rely upon this to make sure that they don't see exacerbated flooding. And as we all know, when you have flooding, you have standing water and you're on septic, I don't want to tell you what you're walking through and what type of health risk it might be. So I'm fully supportive of this. My only question was, is this maintenance going to be done something, do you think it could be done something in-house or under contract or a combination of both?
So we already are under contract with Chris Wayne and Associates to do some of the planting and the planting removal. I believe some of the, do they do the herbicide?
Aquagenics.
Aquagenics, we have them as vendors. This work is predominantly done by outside vendors.
And this work is, that we're talking about here, is coming out of this year's budget, correct?
Yes, and if you look at that chart, I think that the stuff on the top, the items on the top are for this year's budget, right?
No.
Oh, they're not.
This is for
I'm sorry.
continued maintenance for
For
next year,
continued-
for FY '20.
FY '20.
We have
Okay.
money in our current budget, but this
Yeah.
is over and above what we're gonna be asking for in the regular budget
Okay.
for next year. That way we can do the tilling and the,
We will do that, though, this year. And this work that needs to be done in the detention area, we've talked about doing that between now and October during this cycle, correct? Or are we putting this off until after October?
depending on how much money we have left in the budget this year, Dawn, we could
Well,
do some of it this year and then some of it will
Yeah,
spill into
and
next
I
year.
thought we had had that conversation, that we had enough to do that and the two projects down on Spanish River.
Right.
Just so
Okay
everybody-
with that,
just so everybody
or-
understands that.
So I guess the way it works, Tracy, so we'll do this, and then we're gonna have another workshop, and then in that workshop, you present
You'll see the whole
the
budget.
current
You'll see,
and
yes.
additions, and
Correct.
then we'll.
Right.
So, but don't leave,
Okay,
Lisa.
I'm here.
Storm drain maintenance, outflow repairs, and I know your colleagues here as well that you might wanna introduce.
Okay, well, I have with me a fellow professional engineer. His name is Louis Aragema. He's a PE as well, and he and I work together with my firm, Ingenuity Group, on specific projects, more with respect to water distribution and wastewater collection systems. Lou, in his younger days, used to be the Public Works Director for Riviera Beach and the city of Coral Springs. He was also the chairman of the ECR here in Palm Beach County, and the ECR is the East Central Regional Reclaimed Water Facility, which bottom line is the wastewater treatment plant out west that takes care of several municipalities and the county's wastewater system. So I brought him here when we start to have discussions with respect to water distribution and wastewater collection. But we're gonna do drainage first, if I may, Mayor.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let's,
But can you refer, Tracy, in the package here? I know there was a thing about Spanish River.
Yeah, you have two items in your budget here. You see the storm drain maintenance, which is your second item, and then you go down into your 5-year capital items, and you also have another
Right, but there were
160
sheets
for.
on some of this stuff.
Right,
So we're-
correct.
That is a sheet specific on that.
It's not a sheet
I think it's a
specific.
grouping, no, it's a group.
Right.
so the next item, let's talk about stormwater, if I may, okay? Staff and I came up with a 5-year plan. And this will all make sense once if you take this spreadsheet out. There are 22 items throughout the town that have some sort of drainage issue. And so what we did was, starting with like number 1 and going to 22, you have a map too, that starts from the south end of town north, that identifies the areas, which I got Spanish River on here, and the description and the jurisdiction and the priorities and the costs. So when we look as a whole for the stormwater management fee for the year annually, it's about $150,000 currently that we
So-
utilize.
so
So we're
this-
not asking for any more, we're just, so the second line item at $150,000 is basically what we do every year anyway.
Okay, so.
Correct, but that correlates to this.
Yes.
So
The second item does, yeah. The
that
first,
that contradicts what you said previously.
Okay,
So
so
this is
the-
not additional, so.
the
right,
first
we'll
item
take
that
this
you
out at the
see,
next meeting.
yes, the first item that you see is the 150, that's 25,000 more than we usually put into storm drain maintenance, because we have certain issues that we have to take
Okay.
care of this year. Now, the second item that you see under the 5-year capital, the 160,000, that is all related to Lisa's map that she has
okay.
done, and the items that we need to take care of in FY '20.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so how do we rationally discuss this? I mean, it's almost like a separate meeting. We know we need to put more money at drainage. You already know the vulnerability areas
Right.
that we're
Yes.
going with, but that's like a separate meeting from close setting. We know what the goal is, to improve the maintenance and improve the drainage.
Correct.
And we have the areas in town that need this.
Right,
And
and
we
we
have
have
the
those identified and broken down by fiscal year for a 5-year plan. So we
This-
have that.
Basically, what we
This-
need today is we need to know if you're committed to these projects that we've given you, and if you're committed, then we'll include them in your budget for May 30th. If you don't want to move forward with them, then they won't be included.
I have kind of a unique proposal. Maybe this is the time I should jump in on it. You guys have the schedule. You probably didn't understand what I wrote. Do you mind, Mayor, if I?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This is the schedule Lisa was talking about. Sharp. I don't see it. This is Ocean Ridge. Can you see the yellow? No? Okay.
See the highlight?
It's very hard to see.
You see me?
Hard to see.
All right, why don't you just pass this around? It's pretty easy, you'll see the yellow. But basically, there's 21 yellows, 22, okay, I counted wrong. There's 22 yellow spots on that map. And some of you that you,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's all the water drainage systems, the flaps, all the good stuff. And can you put that schedule up? No, this one.
This one, Carla. Just separate.
So,
All right, so is everybody ready for this? Because it's a lot of math, and it's a lot of thinking. All right? So let's just assume that every year we put in 200 grand a year for this maintenance and fixing this drainage problem, that drainage problem. So we have 22 drainage problems. So my suggestion is, what we do is, if you want to jump up, Lisa put high priority, medium priority, and low priority. What I'm saying is, and she also put the years. So you might be down here, you might be down here, right? If you want to jump up and you want us to get this done this year, in this budget year, right? These people, this 200,000, they're going to get it fixed. That's Lisa's high priority, right? What if you're in a year 2? If you're willing to pay 12.5% out of your own pocket for that project, so you might have a $20,000 project in your neighborhood or a $30,000 project in your neighborhood, if you're willing to pay 12.5% and the town has to pay 87.5%, you put in 25 grand, and like I said, if it's say it's 20 grand, you know, you're putting 2,500 in. The block is putting 2,500 in. Then the town pays the 175, right? So you got 200, 175. Now, in my example, I didn't do all this. Now my example, all right? Nobody wants to do it except the people in year 3, right? Year 3 wants to do it. So year 3 has to put 50 grand in if it's 200,000. Like I said, you knock the project down if you're only paying 20 grand. The town pays 150,000, but where do they get the money? We get it from our reserves. So we grab 150,000 from the reserves, and then when year 3 comes, we don't have to pay that 200 grand because we fixed year 3 problem. We put the money back in the reserves. Now, why the town wins, all right, is we're going to get a 12.5%. The town is saving 12.5%. We've got that money in CDs, $1 million in CDs, right? Tracy, few of them, $2 million. We're only making 2.5%. So we're charging you 12, the town gets charged 12, we lose 2.5, but the net difference, the town makes 10%, puts in the pocket of the town and more money to spend, right? Now, why does the resident win? Well, if you can collect the money, you get your problem solved 2 years ahead of time. If you're selling your house, it might go up because now you don't have flooding in your streets, and it's a quality of life issue. So it's all volunteer. If you don't want to do it, you're in year 3 or year 4, wherever you want to be. But if you want to jump up, take a little collection in your neighborhood, we'll do it through the reserves, and we got a win-win situation. So that's my suggestion. Whoops.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, Arthur Ziv, 9 Osprey Drive. We don't really have a drainage problem, get a little bit of standing water, but I'm sure it didn't make the list. And it doesn't need to be, that's not what I'm saying. You know,
You're the only one here, probably.
no, I mean, once a year, there's a little bit of water and it goes away. That means it's working, right? So my question is, that list that had the 5-year drainage program, and the question is really for you, Lisa, is that a problem that needs to be fixed now? What's the long-term impact of not fixing it now? I mean, if you had your choice, would it be better to do those improvements now, because as the water continues to stand there, is it just going to make matters worse over time? And I ask that question because if in fact that is the case, then maybe it makes sense to go ahead and do all of that now. I'm kind of fascinated by the idea that the people who are affected by it need to pay for it. So I take a different view. We're a community. And so if there's a problem with standing water over there, it's going to affect house values perhaps through the entire community. Where am I going with this? Simply that if it's determined that this is something that really there's a lot of benefit for doing it all now, interest rates are so low, go out and get a little bank loan, get it all done, and then allocate that same whatever amount you had every year over the 5-year period. And at the same time, my guess is if you're doing a big project, your actual cost of doing that project is going to come down as compared to doing all these little projects. That's my thought. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So obviously, as you know, we have a finite amount of money every year. You all have done a good job putting monies aside. There's a lot of competing interests. So back in 1998, 99, the focus at the time was thinking about the possibility of switching septic to sewer. And so all the thought was on that, and we were focused on doing all of that. And then we got hit with Hurricane Irene. And then all the focus was on drainage, and we spent several $1 million focused on getting the majority of the drainage permitted, designed, permitted, constructed, installed, working. And so we did take a rifle approach there and spent a lot of money and stayed focused on stormwater. We have other competing interests that we're going to talk about later, possibly, and that involves the sewer system, which is going to be a multi-million-dollar endeavor, maybe for us, maybe not for us, and the discussion about the water distribution system. So this list is spread out over time in order to deal with budgets, our budgets, and what we have, but it is not a list that has such major implication that I would stand before you and say everything has to be done on this immediately because the health, safety, and welfare of the public is in jeopardy. Now, after Hurricane Irene, I would tell you we need to focus all the money in the south end of town. We had cars destroyed, we had water in people's homes, we had people carrying their clothes out the door in their hands trying to get out. That's a major issue. And that needed 100% of our energy, our funds, our thoughts to get that going. And so we did, and we accomplished it. These items are and I know some people are going to get mad when I say they're somewhat of they're nuisance items. We don't see destruction to homes. We have issues where people cannot get their car out of their driveway, low cars, during high tide. But that, when you look at the priority of things, it's not a health, safety, and welfare issue like we had in the past. So it's a balancing act, and we do the best we can to balance the interests of what needs to be done every year.
And I don't know, and it's so hard, I mean, my eyesight's going blind anyways. But on this chart, Lisa was very strategic in laying out what was a high priority, what was a low priority. So to your question, it was a very good question as to, do we need to just pull the trigger and get it done? So I think there is some prioritization here. I wanted to drill down a little bit in talking about under your jurisdiction. Some of these 22 line items are clearly, they're in the town right of way and or they're state because it's a state road. There's a couple that are listed under private. Could you explain to me what that means?
Yes. There are several areas that we, as the town, wish to fix, if you will. However, we have no public access to accomplish that, that issue. So for example, let me just say number 4 and number 5, Harbor Drive North and Harbor Drive South. On the list, the cul-de-sac issues. There's no outfall easement, meaning the town has no right to be going in between two houses to install an outfall pipe. Can we physically do that? Absolutely. Can we engineer it? Absolutely. Can we pay for it? Absolutely. But if two property owners do not want us to trespass on their property, do not allow us to have a drainage easement in favor of the town of Ocean Ridge, our hands are tied.
It's a use easement. It's not, it's.
A drainage
you're trying to
easement.
access through a strip of land.
Right, but if we don't have the right to do so, and that would mean, just so everyone understands, an easement allows the town to come in and install, for purposes of the public, a drainage pipe that does not allow anything to obstruct a drainage pipe, like a fence, a ficus hedge, mature plantings. So there's some give and take here. And so some of these items, all of these items can be addressed, but some of these items do not have public access for us to address them. So that's where the private part comes into play.
One would think neighbors would be very encouraging to other neighbors to, if they're having these problems, to give up a small strip of their land to do it.
They're not even giving it up.
No,
It's just
exactly.
It's just use access.
Yeah.
And it is a problem, believe it or not.
Right, they might have to move their hedge or.
No, even if it's open. There's a sense of losing ownership, even though it's just access. But sooner or later, I would assume that these people will allow you to do what needs to be done, since they're also complaining about flooding in the same breath.
Right. So
Yeah,
just,
you can't have it both
understand
ways.
that when you have people come in and say, well, it's flooding at the cul-de-sac of Harbor Drive North and South, you take this chart out and it says private, and the problem is we don't have an easement. If we had a 10-foot or a 12-foot drainage easement, we could put a catch basin there and an outfall pipe. We could put a storm scepter in there. We can deal with water quality and water quantity issues, but if we don't have a right, we can't trespass
You can't force
onto
it.
other people's property.
Thank you for that explanation. I thought it meant it was private property and we were taking care of someone's private home situation. So really,
Yeah.
it is more a community
Right.
situation, but we need access to a private.
Cooperation.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
and to further Lisa's point about easements and whatnot, we're working right now on two areas on Spanish, on Inlet K. One of them we have an easement for, but it's full of vegetation, a hedge and fence and so on and so forth, and we're going to have quite a bit of pushback on doing that, but we do have the easement, which gives us a right. The second one, we don't have an easement, but we have been able to go talk to the landowner, and because of the flooding and whatnot, was it last week? We were told, do whatever you need, get the attorney to get the documents ready, and we'll get the easement, and we'll be able to
I don't
fix that
think
problem.
that Tracy or the building department is aware of that.
No, they
Oh,
are.
we went.
Everybody is
Everybody
aware.
went.
So I'm
We're
just
talking
telling,
different
I'm
property.
telling, just so the public knows that, and that, these are two issues that we're working on right now that'll come out of this year's
But we're
budget.
devolving into a issue specific rather than a goal setting. So before I call on Peter, let me just clarify here. We have a sheet, 2018, 2019, 125 to 165,000. Is that in our current budget, so we don't need to worry about it?
That's above and beyond, correct?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct, that's above and beyond.
It's
And-
above and
Yeah,
beyond.
that's plus
But
25.
the budget we're dealing with is 2019, 2020, where we have listed 60 to 180,000
That's
dollars.
correct, Steve, yes.
So are we trying to decide whether to put the figures 60 to 180,000 towards drainage and then have a separate meeting and decide the priorities of where to spend that money?
Yes.
So, okay?
Yeah, I mean, we have identified 4 areas
Right,
for
you
this
have them all
fiscal year.
identified, But that's gonna be a separate meeting, because then we have to,
For this
You'll have
fiscal
to
year, I'm
approve plans
saying.
and
So
everything.
if out of those 4 items, if it exceeds what we have budgeted for
It's a
2018,
roll.
2019, let's roll it over and
yep.
to 2019, 2020, because those are, we have estimated lower than,
Gotcha.
So
in the
I'd like
budget.
to make a suggestion on this sheet, because these are big numbers and these are a lot of things. Even if I think we wanted to do 22 things in 1 year, it would just completely wipe out our staff and all our contractors in a single bullet. So I would like to suggest, since you took the time and our confidence level is very high in you, that we probably focus on the high and medium ones and put those right now into a budgetary line item and see how that fits, and maybe leave the low ones for year 2, year 3, year 4.
I would even break it high, medium, low, and just see what, because if you actually look at the money additions, it gets
Yeah,
extremely expensive, extremely.
absolutely.
Okay, so we're agreeing that we're going to spend money in the fiscal year 20 budget of between 60 and 180. We're not gonna worry about this year's budget, because we don't know how much we have left to spend on it.
right, so,
Right, so
but
that's
we
all
have
we're
it
deciding right
listed
now.
here. We have it listed here because that's high priority, that
I got you.
we're trying to be as aggressive as we can to get it as
Right.
much as we can done before the fiscal year's over.
But
Right.
rather than leaving it open, the 60 to 180, can we pull that 180 back down to only maybe having the high priority or the high and medium priority ones?
Yeah, but when I do the math, it's still pretty high. You know?
There's also some big gaps.
So, all right, we
10,000,
decided, that, yes, we're
500,000.
going to put a lot of money towards drainage. That's a goal.
We were asking for
Yeah.
160,000 this
Right.
year to take care of the
150
ones that
plus
are on the
10.
map, and then also the regular 150 for the drain pipe maintenance and
So why don't we agree to
outfalls.
that?
Okay.
And then you gotta tell us, okay,
We'll
here's
bring you
the
the
3 you can
projects.
accomplish
Yep.
in the next year's budget for that kind of money.
But you don't like the idea of offering it to the
You can put out a
residents,
newsletter on
and if
that.
they wanna do it, they,
Yeah. If
For the lower
neighborhoods
priority
want-
to move
sure.
their way up.
all
Yeah.
right.
I mean, it's a neighborhood call, it's not a
Right,
commission call.
Why not?
Can I make a
What's the-
comment quick on number 4?
What's number 4?
Cul-de-sac.
Number 4.
The private.
On Harbor Drive South, you have no outfall easement. Now, when the town was developing, the roads were put in, there are pipes that were put in that are not recorded easements in the courthouse. They don't have documented easements, and you work on them, you know they're there. Well, there was a drain in front of number 50 at Harbor Drive South, and he's a very nice gentleman, elderly gentleman that was from Venezuela. He finally got all his paperwork so that him and his wife are now living here, away from that mess in Venezuela. But while he was living in Venezuela, the driveway was paved, and they covered up the town drain, which is in the right-of-way that belongs to the town. And the driveway goes right straight to the asphalt, just like everybody wants in town. No swale, no dip, and probably no review by you or a permit by the town. So I think you ought to do a little more investigation and come up through the seawall and see where the drain comes and put a drain there.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll show you exactly
So-
where it is.
You know, let me just say this too, if anybody in town, like, I did not know that, okay? If anybody in town has a recorded easement that's not shown on the plat, please let us know. I mean, we would love to go in there and go
some of
in
them were
to
not
everybody's outfall pipe, but we, you know, we have our town attorney here, who
Okay,
has
do-
told us over and over again, we cannot go in areas that are not designated
Okay,
public
do we need
access.
to worry about drainage anymore, Tracy? I'm looking at these items on the list, wet well maintenance, tropical, camera system for pump stations, that's included. We're done with drainage, in other words, this is not a drainage meeting, but it is a
Right.
priority in town.
Mhm.
So we're okay to move forward?
Do you want to talk about the other items, though? Those are all separate.
Underneath drainage,
Those are all separate.
No, these are all separate.
wet well maintenance, tropical.
Yeah, that's all separate.
And
We-
a
well, we
pump
have to do
station. Yeah, it's not
Mhm.
inclusive of the 160.
Right.
Well, yeah, but just to add it in, I mean, we have to do it. The
If-
tropical.
We need a
We have to do
consensus.
tropical.
I mean, if you, okay, so we created justifications for all of those specifics, right? And you have those, and hopefully
Yep.
you've read them all.
Yep.
So I guess the question is,
We just
if
need
you're okay
consensus.
with that,
Yep.
let's move
We're
forward.
okay with
Right,
everything
that's
unless it's ridiculous, because then when we have the longer list, we'll go back through it.
Okay.
But
But
you
if there's
have to-
any questions,
Tropical has to
though.
be done. If tropical goes down,
Well,
it's
that's,
a disaster.
right, well, right,
Yes, Peter?
right. Agreed.
I can't help commenting, the way you're proceeding with this, each of you is trying to grapple with ordering of, you know, minutia, and there's a 900-pound elephant in the room called the expansion of mandated sewage for the town.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. That's the last
We're
one.
getting there.
Well, but do you see my point? For taxpayers, it's hard to hear you discussing the prioritization of these items when we don't have a clue
I
what
agree.
the cost
I agree. I'm
is
trying to move
major.
off drainage.
I
That's
know
why I'm
you
trying to
are.
zip through it,
I-
okay? Okay, so let's, wet well maintenance tropical is a yes, Tracy, okay?
Wet well maintenance, okay. And tropical pump stations, yes.
Tunnel, garage.
Three stations.
All-terrain salary vulnerability study. This would be part of drainage. I don't know why we need to spend 22.
Hold on, no.
That's a separate issue, yeah.
Can we just go line item by line, and we talked about public works
This is a
employee?
problem we
No, no,
had,
no, no,
this
no.
is a problem we had last year, is that
Right.
we.
No, wait a minute,
we
listen
went
to
all
what
over
I'm
the
trying to
place.
do.
Let's go
I'm
down
trying
the
to
list,
keep it
item by
organized.
item.
Keep it organized. We have Lisa here, we have the other expert here. We're dealing with drainage and water.
Okay.
So when we get through drainage and water, yes, because we're spending our entire meeting talking about drainage and water, so let's be done with it.
But can we not go by the order of what we've got here? The next thing on the list would be public works employee, and I think we already addressed that.
Right.
So the next thing would be machinery equipment.
Okay,
Right?
I guess I'm not making myself clear. It's a goal-setting workshop, right? Some of these things don't belong in a goal-setting workshop. So we're dealing with the large issues. So drainage is a large issue. Under the tentacles of drainage are these things we need to spend money on. So what I'm trying to do is put things into like, let's call it 4 buckets, if you will.
Okay.
That's all I'm trying to do, so we don't have to.
I'm
keep
just saying the
cutting
next,
back
the
to
next
drainage.
10 things have really nothing very much to do with drainage. AC units, door replacements.
That's correct.
Right, okay.
But the next ones do.
Okay,
Which is the
so,
vulnerability study.
so Woolbright Detention Area, you agreed
Yes.
to go forward with that one. Okay, and then the second item, storm drain maintenance, you agreed to go with that one.
Yes,
Correct.
What about the Anna Street runoff repairs? Are we good with that too?
yes.
Wait,
Wait, are we at a medium priority? Because
Yeah.
I think if you get to the high priorities, you're gonna be out of money.
Yeah.
let's
What
talk,
I'm
let's
saying
talk
is-
about one at a time, okay? So now you're down to Anna Street, you're saying yes, but Anna Street is a minimum
Medium.
priority. And Anna Street is also connected to the FDOT drain that we need to put into A1A that'll go out Anna
Right.
Street West.
I know all this,
So why
Don.
don't we just put that one on
What I'm trying to
hold?
do is eradicate the things that we don't want to do. We're going to nix some of these things in meeting 2, 3, and 4. I'm trying to move the meeting forward, that's
I
basically
know
what I'm
that, and so some of us have spent some time going down each one of these items as they are listed. And we have areas of concern, or we have objections, or we have positives on it that we need to be able to talk about in a group. This is the only time that we can get together and communicate is at a commission meeting. And so I just
Okay.
think that we need
You
to
wanna
go
talk
down,
about Anna
you
Street?
know,
Let's
each
talk
one
about it.
and see, do we want to do Anna Street as a minimum priority now, or do we want to put it off until FDOT gets through putting in the drain, so then we can see what we need to do with FDOT?
Okay, so the Anna Street repairs has to do with the east side of Anna Street. That has to do with the
Curb, right? That's
the
the
curb,
curb,
yeah,
and
and
the
so, you know, maybe the best thing to do with respect to that is put that one on hold. That one's not a high priority, put it off to the side. You might have some of these that you're gonna put off to the side.
That's exactly
A-
right.
As a
And-
compromise
but the-
to what you're saying and what you're saying, Mayor, is could we see the next iteration come out with everything in a budgetary review that includes only high priority? Then could we also see another one that includes high priority and medium priority? Then we've got two things, we know what's kind of the delta in between, and we can go, because to Mr. Burling's point, there's something that's really high priority that we're not even, getting
We will never
near.
get to.
Yeah.
That's right.
So do you want to go through these and talk about the high priorities first?
Or stick with the drainage, right? Finish anything else,
That's-
high priority drainage, which I
Right.
think is where you were
That's what
going,
I'm-
Steve.
that's
Is
what
there
I'm trying to
anything
do.
else while Lisa's here,
Yes.
high priority drainage, we can talk about at that point?
Right.
I think that's what
So-
you're saying.
Right, so on this list, okay, well, we already discussed Woolbright Detention System, we
Right.
agreed to that. Storm drain maintenance, outfall repairs, we agreed to that, right?
Right.
Anna Street, put that one on
Take
hold,
it
that
out,
one's,
right.
Right?
put that one on hold. Then go down one, I'm sorry, so we're somewhat skipping around, but we're staying with stormwater, so I
Yeah.
can sit down,
Yeah.
right?
Wet well
Exactly.
Wet well maintenance, that's a high priority. You've got to maintain your wet wells as part of the
Okay, done.
system. Done.
Okay.
Camera system, we could talk,
Okay.
on
that's
hold,
okay.
maybe.
It
It's
says
important,
says
it's
high
very
priority.
important.
If it says high priority,
We
let's
can
not
talk
just.
about
It's
it.
25, it's high priority.
Okay,
I would
let's
say
do it.
put, yeah.
Okay.
Down. The next one then goes back to the capital year items,
5-year, right?
which is, okay, fire hydrant repair, you've got to,
Right.
to maintain your fire hydrants. We haven't done that, quite honestly.
High priority.
High priority. Pump station replacements? Yes, Don, I'm
Well, we're
sorry.
going to talk about the fire hydrant, it's now high priority, we're going to talk about that at another meeting, is that right?
No.
Can we talk about it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
talk about it now.
So we got a fire hydrant maintenance, $60,000. Last year, we had in the budget $30,000. We're talking about that Boynton supplies the water, and we supply the underground, the pipage that the water runs through in Ocean
Right.
Ridge.
Yes.
Right.
If we were to, in working with Boynton in the sewer, we were also to convert over our pipage,
Right.
the water pipes in town, over to Boynton. Do
Right.
they then become responsible for
Yes.
the fire hydrants, and we would ultimately eliminate $60,000 from our budget at some point in the future?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably the
That's
very
my
near
point.
future,
So
because our
if-
water contract is up in 2020. We got to make that decision this year.
So
Exactly.
but Commissioner Magruder, we're not really agreeing to a 5-year plan, okay? Because you don't have the authority to even do that, okay?
All
5 years
all I'm
out, but we're
suggesting
just,
is that That's something that we need to talk about in more depth. And
Absolutely.
The ultimate, I mean, the pipes that we have in the ground now are 40 years old. We've got a breakage out here on A1A that's caused by weight. That's cost us $85,000 to do that, plus we still need to fix the road, which is another cost. So those are the things that we really need to spend some time focusing on and talking about rather than rushing through. So-
okay, but just understand on a 5-year, if in fact, the current situation is the town owns the water mains, the fire hydrants, the gate valves, okay? So we have to take the issue as the issue is right now.
So you're gonna
Okay,
take
so-
$60,000 and divide it by 5 years?
No,
No.
60,000
So
is
you're
what
gonna
we
spend
need in FY
$60,000
'20.
next year on,
Yes.
on
Yes.
fire hydrant,
Yes.
possibly, that'd be the high end.
Yes, we're in a critical state right now with our fire hydrant maintenance. There are fire hydrants that just need to be taken care of right now, so we're asking for money to take care of them.
So we didn't do
FY
any of
'20.
that maintenance last year.
And if we give our pipes over to Boynton, that won't be until after the 20-year anyway. So we're asking for the money now so that we can maintain what we have currently. And then if we decide to turn our pipes over,
Then it
then
would
that
go
would be
away.
the next year anyway. And
Okay.
then those funds would go away.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that out so people can kind of think about, you know, what's going on down the road, and dealing with Boynton and the water.
Well, I hate to throw a little tangent, but the commission before us really wanted to own the pipes. And part of it is do we want to be a
Sovereignty.
to Boynton Beach? And that'd be the problem. So if we ever not wanted Boynton Beach water and wanted somewhere else's water, we'd have to rip up the pipes or buy the pipes off of Boynton or however. So, I mean, that's just the issue. I'm not voting either way.
I
I just-
understand that,
and it's
and the alternative to that was to get the water from Manalapan.
And they are going out of that
And
business.
they are, and Hypoluxo
We
has
don't
been
have a
getting water
choice.
from Manalapan, and the rates have gotten so high with the surcharges and whatnot that they are now pulling away from Manalapan. So that leaves us with Boynton.
Mm-hmm.
And since Boynton would ultimately be doing the sewer, so it seems to me, and I'm just one person, but it seems to me that we ought to look at that. And the fire hydrant expense is just one of the issues. When the pipes break, we have to call Boynton, what is it, Inland, the maintenance company that comes in and does?
Line
Line Tech.
Line Tech comes in, digs it all up, fixes it, and then we get billed for it. If it
Okay,
belongs to
but to,
Boynton, it's all our
let's
responsibility.
understand that someone's going to pay for it, and it has to be taken care of,
And
okay?
it'll
So
be
we have
paid
100,
for
we,
by probably the increase in water rates.
okay, so we have 143 fire hydrants. Have we been taking care of them the way we should? I would probably tell you, I don't think so. So we looked at this in a 10-year plan, whether it goes 10 years or whether it goes 1 year. We need to be a little more proactive with our fire hydrants. And so they cost about $4,000 a fire hydrant to either fix them or replace them. Because over time, standards change and we have to replace them. Some of them, we just found a few that are not working. That's, okay, this is a safety issue. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is the difference between a medium priority and a high priority. This is a high priority. Whether you all keep it later on down the road or not, we're just telling you that you need to set aside $60,000 a year approximately every year. That's all we're saying. And if you all are in agreement with that, then we can move to the next one.
I'm
Yes, go
fine
ahead.
with that, but I'm
Okay.
just looking,
Okay.
you know, down the future.
Okay. Pump station replacement, that's with respect to the pumps. Again, you have 5 submersible electric pumps on Tropical underneath the ground. You've got another 5 electrical submersible pumps on Woolbright. You have 2 or 3 pumps on Coconut. They've been here for almost 15 years. We need to have a plan in place that we can repair them and switch them out. And so that's what that one is all about.
Which is that 20,000 per year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And that might be a low figure to replace the pump station. It's very expensive.
Right, but I
Right.
think
Yeah.
what Lisa's
But
saying,
we
we
start
don't
there.
know when we'll need to do it. So
We
if
don't.
budget
Exactly.
20,
But we need to be
30.
proactive.
Right.
We've been more reactive. We need to be more proactive.
Yep.
So paving, grading, drainage, we already talked about that. That was an estimated based on that 22-item list. Beach crossover repairs, that's another thing, you know, let's put some money aside so that we can address these issues. We've been hearing issues about the beach, and so let's start being proactive. And when
Now,
the
none of
time
the-
comes that we need to do something on a beach crossover, we have the ability to do so.
Okay, so
Does that
none are
make sense?
dangerous at this point?
No.
None that we have to worry about, okay.
We're gonna take a look at Porter.
Okay, yeah. And then, I mean, street sign replacement, we all know that's,
But that
You
doesn't
know.
fall under drainage.
no, I'm sorry, I'm just helping you go along the
Okay.
list. Sorry. And then the last one we could talk about later with respect to wastewater collection,
Sewer.
sewer.
Right, right.
You just
So
want
I
to do
don't wanna-
drainage right now, and then we'll come back and do
Right,
water
but
and
now, do we want to now move to sewers? Or do we wanna go back up to the top of the list? I'd say we have Lisa here, we have Ron here, we move to sewers now. Is that acceptable to everybody?
If I may, can we just talk about water distribution just for the moment? They're drinking water lines. Okay, just in general. you have about 69,000 linear feet of water mains throughout the town. Okay, the majority of those mains were installed back in 1994-ish. Okay, we have a set of plans from Barker, Osher, Anderson that were created in 1992, where a lot of the main lines have either been replaced or additional lines have been installed. Some of them are on A1A on the east side, now we have extra ones on the west side. You already know how many fire hydrants we have. And in the past, it has always been the commission's desire, as a home rule issue, for the town to own the lines. That's because they've wanted to always have the option to not be beholden to one utility. And so that's why we have the water lines. The water lines, those main water lines from 1994 are not that old. I mean, if they're 25 years old, that's not old.
What's the life of a water pipe?
I mean, there's water lines in New York City that are 125 years old and they're still working. Do they break from time to time? Yes, they do. Are there older pipes in the ground? Yes, there are. I had made the suggestion in the past that if one day we do switch from septic to sewer and the roads get torn up, great opportunity, replace the old water lines. It's cheaper. The area's a disaster anyway, just put them in at the same time. So if we do major road repairs, like we did on Hudson, we replace the water line. Hudson's water line is from 2004. Tropical's water line was from 2004. That's been redone as well because we tore the road up. So we fixed the water, we changed the water distribution system at the same time. So I just want to explain to you that we have really old pipe in the ground. We have really new pipe in the ground.
Lisa, I have a question
And we've been
for you.
maintaining them since the beginning of time.
I have a question for you. I spoke with Colin Groff with the city of Boynton Beach, and he seems to think that they own some of our water lines. Do you know anything about that?
No. I don't want to see it.
Not that I know. We have a GIS of all the water mains, of all the fire hydrants, of all the types of pipe, of pretty close to when they were installed. Either they're pre-1994 or post-1994 or 1994. We have all that information broken down in our GIS system. So we know where they are. We know what type it is. And we know all the appurtenances, i.e. the gate valves and the fire hydrants. We know all that. We know what type of pipe it is. We know what size it is. We have all that inventory. In fact, every year from Gatsby 34, you guys have to approve your assets every year. So we know what the cost is. We have that. We've been maintaining it and handling it. But it's at your pleasure, obviously, if you choose to give that authority over to somebody else. I mean, you can do that. Would you have to pay for a fire hydrant? No, that would be their responsibility, but they would then in turn have to recuperate it somehow. So at the end of the day, it's the people it's all of you have to pay for it. It's just a matter of in what way? Is it gonna be a tax bill, or is it gonna be a utility bill at the bottom that says, capital improvement fee or something like that? So that's the water distribution. Okay?
Okay, does everybody agree we're on to sewers?
Thank you.
Thank you, you're welcome.
But you have to put part of sewers,
Yes, so,
Next, so Lisa?
oh, thank you.
You didn't get
There's only 2 in the fridge.
Okay, we want to start with Lisa, you want to start with Ron? How do you want to do this?
So septic to sewer. There have been municipalities that have been proactive switching septic systems to sewer systems. And there are several different kinds of sewer systems. You don't want to go into the minutia of the different types of sewer systems. That should be done probably another time. But right now, I think it's been the commission's desire to look at the planning involved if in fact sometime in the future, which Commissioner Bessler has stated to us on his recent trip to Tallahassee that it's coming down the pike, there's gonna be a mandate. There's never been a mandate. It's gonna be an angry fight. That's my opinion, to mandate something like that. However, if the commission desires to be more proactive, the next step then would be to, you've already asked us to look at a financial consulting service company to look at the funding options and the grant options, and so that's coming before you at the next commission meeting. So, so what probably needs to happen next, and not at a budget meeting, is maybe a little of some discussion about understanding the types of systems that there are, so we can get a little better understanding as to what you all are looking for. And then I had in the past created an opinion of cost to make that switch over, but that was like 20 years ago. And so we can do that again and work with a financial consultant to come back before you with a plan. Now, I brought Lou here because if you wanted to have a little more discussion with respect to impact fees, he's set fees before and has dealt with
I think you
utilities,
made
so.
a great suggestion. We should have a separate sewer meeting or add it to the regular town agenda, not a budget meeting. But as far as the study of the cost, or whatever you want to call that vehicle, I believe we should have Ron get up and speak a little bit about Crown Colony, because I think we probably
Right.
need to do that because the project is
Sure.
moving forward with or without the town.
Well, so let me explain Ron's project, if I may. Ron, you jump up and tell me if I'm wrong. Every year they come to the town and they ask, usually in the wintertime, and what's the status? And so here's some exciting news, because Ron has been involved lately. Some of those package plants that were on the verge of totally wiping out have now been implemented in such a way with his direction to a point where this is not an emergency and we have, and we're all in trouble, right?
That's true.
Okay, so,
Forbearing Wellington Arms.
yes, and I think he's working with the other two to try to help them out. This is a community thing, they've been all working together
Is it new
unbelievably.
equipment? Is it new technology? How did you rescue these?
You want to explain?
Okay.
Because it really changes the whole conversation.
Well, it does, in that the three plants we're talking about, okay, take care of 5 communities. Those 3 plants are Turtle Beach, the Ocean Ridge Yacht Club, and the one that maintains Crown Colony, Colonial Ridge, and Ocean Manor. That's the one that I happen to manage. That one's 240, and the other units, we got 50 and 25. That's right, 25. Now, the Turtle Beach is running. They just don't want it to continue to run it, because you have to maintain it yourself. As long as you maintain the plant, it'll run fine. The Ocean Ridge Yacht Club has a problem with the way it leaches out into the coral shelf, and it needs anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 worth of repair, which they've delayed on because they believe that there's a pipe coming through and they were going to hook up to it. And that's being delayed, so they're going to have to cough up the money to maintain that plant. The one that I manage is running extremely well, and it has at least another 25 to 30 years worth of life. It's a concrete plant, and it doesn't go out on the shelf. It uses injection wells, so we're not putting any water, okay, into the groundwater system. Our water goes down 100 feet and ends out going into the intercoastal waterway without having any effect upon groundwater pollution. So they can be maintained. As a matter of fact, I've given to Christine, I believe, okay, a way to help Wellington Arms out. If you get a hold of the same company that Boynton uses to maintain the beach, which is U.S. Water. we changed over to them, and they have substantially saved us money, and I've gotten Ocean Ridge Yacht Club to do the same. They, all of us are gonna cut our costs by anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 annually. So we can maintain these plants
The way you exist.
the way we exist today, that's correct. Now, all three of us really want to be out of the sewer business, okay? This is not, I didn't work my whole life, okay, to be the president of poop, you know? I mean, this has been the pinnacle of my professional career. So, we signed a document about 5 years ago with the town commissioners at the time, as well as all the 5 communities that I just talked about, that says, we want to go forward with this when Boynton's ready. That's just been going on and on for some time now. The problem that I see is that, and you were talking about water issues, okay, with, I believe it was the Harbor Drive issue where it's private property. Boynton was under the assumption that they could go into private property and just build a plant, a pump station. That's gonna be an issue for Crown Colony. So where they're locating this is going to delay, okay, the implementation of this sewer pipe coming across. Also, cost-wise, it's a very complicated shared cost arrangement. There are 7 players in the cost of this pipe coming across there in the eventual hookup. And it depends upon the timing of the hookup. The plants, each one of us have a part of it. Riverwalk has a part in it. And whatever the difference is between the total cost that is made up by Boynton until those connections happen, whether they're in the privates, for example, on Fayette, as a house would be, as they put the pipe down the street, as you hook up to that, you cough up the money, and it goes back to Boynton. Boynton does not take any responsibility at the end game. There's zero. I actually don't see a whole lot of costs other than structural for Ocean Ridge either in this plan, because they're going to own the pipes unless you decide something differently. They're going to, and those pipes are actually going to be paid for by those 7 communities. Okay, so eventually, all that cost is just dispersed amongst the residents, okay? Over time. That's absolutely right. So, my involvement with this is that since we're the largest of the 3 plants, I've been the spokesperson for that. But I've let the town know all along, everything I've ever done with Boynton Beach, I've given a note to Jamie Titcomb, and I have subsequently started it with town manager and with Lisa. Matter of fact, I gave them all the information that I've had. So I'm willing to work with this, but this is your call how to go forward on this. You need to help me, okay, because Boynton, they haven't contacted us back. They still owe you a great deal of information, and they owe us a lot of information. Now, I have an interesting problem in that in October, the plant, I need to relicense that plant. It's a 5-year plant, and that's $25,000 in cost to get the licenses for that plant. So I was hoping that we would be hooked up by then, but this is unlikely. So now I'm reserving that $25,000 at the Crown Colony level, okay, to make that happen. And I plan to keep that running. Unless the EPA dictates something to me because of, but with my injection well system, I'm in no rush because I'm pushing through 50,000 gallons a day we're processing, and it's working just fine. So is that
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah, I don't have anything else to do.
So Boynton Beach Utilities paid for a plan. They've created a plan already. That's what Ron's talking about. We have copies of the plan. So they designed the plan. They're gonna pay for the capital improvements to do the improvements. Over time, they're gonna pay for it, like Ron said, over time. So that's probably gonna be the process moving forward with the rest of the town, but that's how it's being done with them. There are definitely issues with respect to putting pump stations on private property. So the plan probably, as it's presented now is not acceptable, right?
Well, they're looking for an easement right, all right? That's what they want to have. They want to have an easement right, and,
We know about that.
you know, I can tell you, I can only speak for myself, but the president of Crown Colony, Salem Mesro, there's no way in the world he's gonna buy that without getting something from that, what that means to us in terms of disruption. Also, that's gotta tear up Chickasha too to put that in. That pipe's gotta come down from, as I explained to you when
Right.
you and Tracy were there. That's gonna tear up that street. And there's a lot of other infrastructure issues where they wanna come up. They wanna bring that pipe up right to where our south injection well is. That's just not gonna happen. And you just can't turn that over. You gotta keep the other plant running at 50,000 gallons a day. You surely are not going to have it stop. You stop that more than 24 hours, you got bigger problems than you can imagine, so.
So we've been working with them, and we're there for them. They're our residents, and we're working with Boynton Beach Utilities to
Right,
make
so what
sure.
do you need from us in this budget? It sounds like you need a financial person who is going to provide what information to us?
Well, I mean.
And we need
We'll-
another study, like the study you did in 90.
We're doing the RFP right now, we're getting that ready, we'll bring that back to the May meeting, to start the process for the RFP. After we get the bids back in for the RFP, we'll have a better understanding of how much we'll need to spend on the person that's coming in. So, after that, I spoke with Assistant City Manager and Utility Director Colin Groff today. He said he would be ready within about 5 to 6 weeks to come in and have a workshop with you all to give you their plan and how they want to proceed, and then we'll have a lot more information to move forward.
So what exactly is this RFP for? Because
It's
of-
for the financial services
financial.
to protect the town, so that when Boynton comes to
Okay.
us and says it's gonna cost this much, our financial services person will say, but wait a minute, we estimated at this.
Okay, good.
But you know, on an engineering standpoint, I can give you an opinion of cost. That's the cost, to put in the capital infrastructure. With respect to rates, the rates have already been established. The rates that you pay for water distribution right now for your drinking water bill is the same rates that the city of Boynton Beach uses. There's an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement between our municipality and their municipality that those rates stay the same.
Yeah, in-city rates, and
In-city rates,
they have
right.
said that they will maintain those in-city rates
In-city
for us.
rates, which would include, if in fact we move to sewer, those rates would stay the same. Now, be aware, Florida statute has the right of a utility to charge a 25% surcharge above and beyond for people outside the city limits. So they could, in fact, do that. But I can tell you that it's pretty much standard in the industry, from government to government, it usually doesn't happen. It usually occurs when private development is occurring outside of their municipal limits and they have the right to charge an extra 25%. But the city of Boynton Beach has said to us publicly over the years and at the last workshop that they were going to keep the same rates.
With no intention.
With
to
no
do the
intention of a
25%.
25% surcharge.
So are you saying no matter which way we choose to have it done, as long as Boynton Beach agrees to it, it doesn't matter how much the infrastructure costs? Meaning that, you know, you can do gravity, you can do the pump stations, whatever, right? And they're all different ways of doing it, and they all have different costs associated with that. But
Right.
it doesn't matter to Ocean Ridge, because whatever it costs Boynton, they can only charge us what Boynton residents are paying.
Right, those are
So-
usage rates.
Right.
Usage
That's for
rates.
usage, though.
They
Right.
cannot charge you for usage any more per gallon than they charge themselves.
Right,
Okay,
but then are you saying there's a capital improvement rate that's gonna be added to it, depending on which way we choose to get rid of our waste?
Right, so,
Okay.
so the capital project is just like, it's at the actual project to put the infrastructure in. Like
And I
like
don't
Ron
wanna-
has shown on his, they already have a preliminary plan of their capital project that Boynton drew
If
in
I
the
may.
preliminary. Yeah.
They sent me this just recently, just to give you an idea of cost, and I'll leave this with Lisa. The Colonial Ridge Yacht Club, okay, their cost to hook up is $645,000 or $12,900 per unit owner. Okay, Colonial Ridge, okay, 131 units, 782,000, 6,400. Ocean Manor with 22 units or 20 units, they are at $6,000 or $8,000. Turtle Beach with their 25 units, $13,935, and Crown Colony with their 150, $920,000 or $6,221. This is the cost of the hookup, the dismantling of the plants, okay, and the whatever the cost is, that's their section. This is the $3 million cost that basically is for what is, well, let's call it for the five communities that are south. I'll leave you this.
Right, that's great.
I'll leave you this.
So what we would do on a smaller scale with them and a bigger scale with the rest of the town is that they've already identified total costs. For example, Colonial Ridge, the total cost is $645,000. I mean, on behalf of the town, then we would check to make sure if does that make sense, or is that some crazy number?
Right, but would that be amortized over so many years, or
Yes.
would that be a hookup fee? Okay.
No, that would depend upon how it's financed.
Right.
It would depend if the financing is done through state level, or county level, or even Ocean Ridge level, okay? So and that would all come back in taxes one way or another, and I imagine that depending upon either a bond issue or something else that they would do in order to fund that, or you might be able to pay it in full with a discount. It doesn't matter. But I would strongly encourage this financial person that you got planned to take a look at that, because I sent them back a note, which you can read on that, basically telling them that they need to stop taking those drugs. Some of it doesn't make sense with the flow rate that they use. Now, they got a big picture of things, but what they were using just doesn't match up with what the output is, for example, of our sewage treatment plant. They don't, they're matter of fact, they're off by a factor of 3. So if that cost, I believe that cost is substantially less than what they're projecting.
And not only that, but the financial services company will be able to tell us what we can do for grants and such.
So,
Can I just add one more thing? I say that this at the risk of being somewhat negative, to think that we are gonna maintain city rates at the rate of Boynton, I think is a very naive assumption for any of us to make, particularly with our water negotiations in 2020 and the fact that they desire to have our pipes desperately. So there is no guarantee that we will always have in city rates with Boynton. And that, it is not a state law. It is absolutely not a state law.
It's
we
the
can
agreement,
contract.
you already
We can
have
contract.
you already have an agreement.
wait a minute, we have a
And
lawyer.
the agreement is up in 2020.
Correct.
We have
Yes.
a lawyer.
Right.
What's the answer to the question?
Well, I think that's what the financial person, by statute, municipalities who have utilities, who have water service utilities, I don't know whether it's 5 years or 3 years or whatever, they have to have a consultant come in and to assess their maintenance costs, their costs to manufacture the water and to maintain the system, and then those are the rates that they're allowed to charge, to charge their customers.
Municipalities, you mean Ocean Ridge and Boynton?
No, well, okay, now getting to that, I believe the way that it would work, but that's how come we kind of need a financial consultant who has done rate studies before. They wouldn't be doing a rate study for us. They would be looking at different options, or basically to kind of say, yes, what Boynton's telling you makes sense and these numbers sound about right. But I would assume that if the way that Boynton would be looking at this, Boynton would say, okay, here's what our rate consultant says for the city of Boynton Beach, this is what it costs. However, because Ocean Ridge, because here's all the other things that we're doing, we're putting in pipes for sewer, we're putting in new infrastructure for water, then based on that, the rate is this. And that's how come I think we need a consultant, because I don't know enough about that stuff to say, well, okay, that makes sense or that doesn't make sense. But I think common sense will kind of tell you, if they're spending an exorbitant amount of money over here, their residents are not going to subsidize all of the infrastructure that they're kind of spending over here, because even though we would kind of be part of their utility system, we aren't part of their municipality. And so that's where I think the break may come, but we kind of need more, we need someone, who has done these things before, who can kind of come in and kind of say, yeah, this is what you're going to be looking at.
Have we begun to renegotiate our 2020 expiration on our contract? Have we had any discussions whatsoever?
Yes, we have. We have.
Are you trying to say something?
Well, I just want, I wanted him to explain to you, because he was a utility director. So he could tell
he
you
has the
how they deal with capital improvements versus rate structure. Two different things. One is usage, the other one's capital improvements. Two different line items, so he's the guy that was on the other side. He's the guy that you want to throw things at when.
So can you tell us all your name and position?
Lou Arigema. I am a consulting engineer. I've worked in government for over 30 years. I've been a city engineer. I've been a utilities director, and I've also worked in public works. I've also been on the private side. So I consider myself an expert in capital improvement budgeting. I've done 5 to 10-year utility plans in the $50 to $100 million range, and basically from soup to nuts, basically what we're talking about here, but on a much smaller scale. And with regard to utility rate studies, yes, you bring in an expert to look at everything, because they have to look at not just the water that you're producing, the wastewater that you're treating, but also these capital plans that you have. Some things that, as I was listening to Lisa and others speak about, what we didn't talk about was life cycle. And all infrastructure has life cycle. For instance, water pipes. What's the life cycle of water pipes? 75 to 100 years. That's what the engineers say. Some last longer, some less. So the 25-year pipes that you have in the city, do you replace them now or not? That's something that a Boynton Beach would look at. How old are your pipes? Do we want those old pipes, or do we want you to replace them? Those are questions that are part of negotiation and so on. With respect to just the overall rates, from Ocean Ridge's perspective, right now, all you pay is a water bill. If you get sewers, guess what? You're going to be paying a sewer bill too. So now your utility bill will more than double. Now it's just a fact. I'm not trying to shock you or anything. It's just a fact, because you pay for water, and usually your sewer rates are based on how much water you use. So if you use 10,000 gallons a month, your sewer rate would be that. So just a quick number, per 1,000 gallons. If you were paying, let's say, $2.50 per 1,000 gallons, that would be your water rate. Your sewer rate may be $3 to $4 per 1,000. So it's a little bit more, because a lot more to clean up the water, the wastewater. So, in total, you get a little bit higher bill. Now, with respect to the sewer conversion, what you have is, it's quite complex. The first question that I would ask of a Boynton Beach is, okay, we're going to calculate these numbers, and I look at it as an engineering study. We're going to look at the overall, how much sewage will be produced in the town of Ocean Ridge. So the first question that Boynton Beach has to ask is, can our wastewater treatment plant take that, and without an increase in their overall plant size? If there has to be a plant expansion, the price goes up significantly. And sometimes, you're right at the edge, and all you need is just one more customer to come in, and it kicks in the plant expansion. So that's something that they have to answer. I don't have the answer for you right now, and that's part of the engineering study that you do. Then, I don't know what Boynton Beach has done thus far as looking at all of Ocean Ridge with respect to it. Maybe nothing, I don't know. But I look at that as an engineering study. Lisa mentioned they did something 20 years ago, okay? Well, obviously, that needs to be updated. Whether you hire Ingenuity or you hire somebody else, that's a choice of this town commission. But based on that, now we come up with a price that, what is the cost of this total sewer conversion? And essentially, it's the homeowners, the businesses, the condos that will be splitting this cost, because it's a total cost. And it'll come in the form of some sort of an impact fee. So it's gonna say, you want this sewer conversion, this is what it's going to cost you. Now, of course, Boynton Beach would then issue some sort of a bond to build this system. And how do they get repaid? They get repaid through these impact fees. And the impact fees can be paid back in a number of ways. And that's where your financial people come in and tell you how it can be paid back. And whether it's over a few years, it could be cash. I can remember I did a study back in Coral Springs years ago. And there was this one medical doctor that wanted the sewer conversion. And I told him that the price back in the mid-'80s was going to be about $50,000 per lot. He says, I'll write you the check right now. I said, well, I thank you for that, but I don't just need the check from you. I need the check from everybody in order to build this. So it's a real tricky plan, but the first step is to get the update on the overall engineering for this preliminary engineering to come up with an approximate, as Lisa said, she can give you a cost for this conversion. And of course, it would have to be worked out with Boynton Beach, because again, you know, you're looking at Ocean Ridge, and then you have to transfer the sewage from here to their plant. So there's a lot of moving parts in there. And then how's it paid for? Well, that's down the road. It's not, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. I understand getting the financial person aboard, but they got to be able to do something with that. That financial person has to be able to look at something first. So in my opinion, you know, the engineering study comes first, and then you go from there, and then there are various methods of how to pay it back and so on.
So Ingenuity did this 20-odd years ago, this engineering report, and we can have that updated?
We did some preliminary numbers back 20 years ago.
So is it two prongs here that I'm hearing? Because we need the engineering report updated. We also need the RFP for the financial expert? Is that what we call it?
So to update the plan, it sounds like that's what needs to be either squeezed out of this year's budget or definitely planned for in next year's budget. So we're back to our workshop.
Right. But the RFP, we know how much that is roughly, right?
No,
So-
we don't yet. We don't have any
We don't
idea
have any
yet.
idea?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
We have to put the RFP out on the street first, and then once we get the bids in, we'll have a cost.
All right.
Do we have a guesstimate on what it would take for engineering to
Yeah, so I would
redo this
say
plan?
that, I mean, we wouldn't expend more than $25,000 to come back before you with, a report that would explain the different types of systems so everybody understands what we're looking at, and an opinion of cost, and an opinion of cost per unit, meaning an opinion of cost, how much it's gonna cost the individual homeowner or the individual unit. We can come back and give that to you. And then what you're saying is we take that report and hand that to the financial folks.
Right.
Who would come back to you and say, these are your options for funding, if you choose to pay for this yourself, or if you choose to have Boynton Beach, take the whole thing on themselves.
Well, I believe that's also a workshop with the Boynton Beach, and because it's going to be their utility, and how do you, I mean, what the town of Ocean Ridge needs to decide is whether they want to own the sewer lines or not. That's one question that you have. You know, and I can't tell you, I know I have my own personal opinion, but, you know, again, as a board, you decide whether you want to own the system or not. I know, and just.
But we would need counseling on that. We can't just sit up here in a vacuum and say, oh, well,
Of course.
you do, I don't.
Of course. And I'll give you an example. I did some work for the town of Lauderdale by the Sea in Broward County many years ago. And their water, they own their water system and the water supplied by the city of Fort Lauderdale. They also own their sewer system. Their sewer goes to the city of Pompano Beach. So they own all their infrastructure, but, you know, it just, you know, it comes in from one and it goes to another. Now, what is there anything wrong with that? No, absolutely not. However, they do have annual operations and maintenance of the water system and the sewer system. So that's what you have to take into consideration, is if you own this infrastructure, remember, life cycle. And, I mean, you know, if it's something brand new, we don't worry about it now, but, you know, 50 years from now or 75 years from now, there'll be another commission sitting up here trying to figure out what has to happen. So there has to be some annual operation and maintenance that would have to be put into a budget, and it has to be considered.
Okay. So to sum up, should we start Ingenuity on its path now? Because, I mean, you're not gonna do this overnight. It's gonna take a couple of months.
Well, Lisa will fill you in on that.
And then the RFP will launch in the next budget or something like that?
So you would have to, you would have to have consensus whether you wanted to take that out of your current budget or not. You would have to take the funding from another line in the budget, because our engineering line is almost 100% already expended, and we're only at 6 months.
So maybe you can put it on the May agenda, town meeting?
Yes,
And maybe you could give us a recommendation on where we could squeeze something else?
absolutely.
Because we're
But I
gonna
don't-
need this anyway.
Absolutely, but I don't think we should stop down the path of putting out an RFQ.
No, she said you could
No,
same
we
time.
can, we're
So
doing
do
that
the
at the same time, yes.
Okay.
That's not costing us any money to do that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is we've got to kind of work backwards too, because if we're going to ask for grant money, this legislation only is open from January to May. So we need to be prepared if we're going to ask money into this next fiscal year for grant money. So I think what we should do is take some reserves, put it and just say as a contingency, if we get matching funds, then we're fine. If we don't, we could just pull it back into our reserves, so. But we should have that plan, because we've got to start talking to the congressman
2020?
now.
January to May of 2020?
Well, right, because Lisa's expense
All right,
is,
no, that's-
is for the
just making
sewer,
sure.
and this expert's for a sewer, and if we get matching
Yep.
funds for it,
Yep.
we're only paying
Right.
50 cents on the
Moving
dollar,
forward.
so.
And, you know, in some grants, that money can be recuperated. So keep
Right.
that in mind, this is a separate, this is just with respect to sewers. Keep that separated, and there could be a chance where that could be recuperated in a grant. The planning of it.
Correct, right.
Super, thank you very much. That was
Thank
great
you.
knowledge, great information.
Betty.
Yes, Betty. Let's just wait for Terry.
If you all are going to go ahead with this, I think you also might consider, which would give you a little bit of leverage on Boynton, that the Boynton Beach would tie into it, and they should pay a portion of it, or help, or if you have problems, and the county park, which will also be on it, should be part of the dealings, just to save us some money.
No, that's a good point, Betty, because I think what we should do, and consider it when we're talking to Boynton, do we go get the grant with Boynton, or do we do it by ourselves? Because Boynton's got some political power too, and, you know, it'll save us money in the long run. So we've got to talk about all those issues too.
It's interesting because DeSantis, his mandate was the barrier islands.
Right, well, he was the one who asked me,
Yeah.
why didn't you, you know, I
Right.
gave Hypoluxo 670 grand this year, why didn't you ask for anything? So
Yeah.
we should be
I
asking.
think in looking at it as a barrier island, that'll help us if we're kind of ahead of the other municipalities.
Totally
I think so too.
As far as getting grant money.
Proactive.
Okay, so returning to the capital items list, we are down to Add Public Works employee we
Yes.
agreed to, correct? So we're at machinery and equipment.
I think anything high priority, I don't even know if we need to discuss, honestly. I mean,
That would
if we
be much
trust,
appreciated.
yeah, if we trust our staff to,
Yeah, I agree.
Do
Okay,
you want
so
to just go ahead with all high
Yep.
priority items on the
Yep,
list?
so we're down through,
Please clarify.
I wanted to
Oh.
talk about the utility truck bed.
where's that one done?
That's underneath machinery and
Got it,
equipment.
yep.
Public Works truck utility bed and lights, 15 grand, high priority. I understand what they're looking for. I think it's a great idea. My question is, this is the truck that they're talking about putting the bed on is a 2015 truck with 22,000 miles on it. Is there any advantage, could we trade this truck now in on a new truck with the equipment that we want on it for something similar to the 15.7 or so? Can we upgrade that way as opposed to just buying the bed, taking a bed off of the truck and putting a new bed on? That's
A new truck with the equipment that we're looking for is gonna range about $50,000.
about 50?
Yes,
Okay,
for a new truck.
that answers that question.
Yeah.
He's also, just so you know, he's also putting
It's got
a
The winch on it as well.
winch on the back of it that will help him to lift the sewer drains and whatnot, that'll swivel. Okay, that's what I want to know.
We tried to save you money by just trying to retrofit our current vehicle.
Right, and I just want to make a clarification on the Public Works. This is for FY '20 on the
Employee.
is the 60 employee part, that's the 60. Okay,
Right.
so,
But you're bringing in somebody temp until, right?
correct.
Correct.
So I just want to clarify that.
So that 60 grand
It's employee,
that
that's a
you
new
had
position.
estimated, that looks to me to be like 43,000 or so is what we're looking.
Say that again, Don?
If you've got in there something like 60,000 for this the full-time employee, and that includes benefits, so that, to me, kind of came somewhere around 43 grand for the salary, and then the rest is in benefits?
Yeah, and we're gonna do the salary study to tell us what that level needs to
Yeah.
be.
Right, because obviously he comes in.
This is an
under bill.
estimate, right? So if you approve this employee, we will have Wayne as the director, you'll have Billy, and then you will have 2 other positions.
2.
Yes, this is an additional employee.
I thought
We
this
have
was
2.
replacement.
This is additional position,
Right, but the other employee's disabled, right?
currently.
So
correct.
if he comes
Temp
back-
one coming in is to fill that temporarily.
Right, so
And
it's
then
a
when we hire
temp.
the full-time, the temp's gone.
Correct. We already have a position for that, though. If the person who's out comes back, he takes that position. This is an additional position, so you would have 3 public works people. So that's what you have to decide.
2 working and 1 not working, correct?
But we don't have to worry about the guy not working.
So,
3 working?
correct.
So it's pretty simple. You don't hire number 3 until you know the status of number 2. Because we have 2, we've always had 2,
Yes.
and we should move forward with 2.
We've always, yes,
Correct.
correct. We're
Correct.
asking
And I
for an
understand that
additional.
There's squeeziness with number
Right,
2.
right.
Right.
But there's no sense if he's coming back and joining staff and is endorsed and doesn't have issues with his supervisor,
Mm-hmm.
or his supervisor doesn't have issues with him, then that's our 2 people.
You have 2. We're asking for an additional.
One more.
Right, and the
No.
reason,
Well, that's what
yes,
I
we
was
are.
wondering.
We are.
The
We're,
ask is to ask for the additional.
But I just
Okay,
asked
can I
Wayne, he said he
explain?
was not asking for that.
Can I explain just for a second, please? So the additional employee is so that we can start an apprenticeship program for that employee to work with Wayne in the building and public works departments to cover inspections and things of the like in the building department. We currently go out for that service with Hybrid. We want to get an employee in-house to do inspections and also public works. We have a lot of maintenance issues that we need to catch up on that haven't been taken care of over the years, and we have very limited staff to get everything done that you need done. And then we can also look at maybe pulling in-house some of the Chris Wayne contract, and that could save money over time.
Right, but what about in the current? Wouldn't that, if you're gonna get rid of the consultants, wouldn't that 60 grand not be an add-on, the 60 grand?
The 60,000 would be starting FY '20.
Okay,
So the temporary employee coming in right now is to cover somebody who's out right now, so
Okay,
the second position, okay? This is an additional, so that's good, that's why it's on the list. It's for you to discuss, to see what kind of policy decision you want to make as far as staffing.
My feeling is that perhaps all the employees weren't pulling their weight, and now that issue's being sorted out, and we're gonna something will happen with position number 2. So I'm not necessarily a fan of bringing on a third.
But this 60 grand, this is kind of a one-shot deal once he gets off disability, correct?
This
And
is
then,
a, this
so it
is a
wouldn't,
separate position.
See,
For
that's how it was-
starting
it
FY
was
'20,
explained to
a
me in
brand new
business.
position.
but then there would be savings though, because then you're not using the consultants.
Correct, which I just explained, so we would
Right, so
bring in-
right now, this 60 grand is an add-on.
Yes.
Next year,
The-
it won't
it's
be an
starting.
add-on, you'll
No.
start knocking some, or,
It's an add-on starting FY '20.
okay, well, I'm talking about 21. I'm just saying, this
Okay.
isn't carrying into the future,
It's an
right?
additional
a-
town
Yes.
employee.
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Right, but you're getting rid of consulting services, and this doesn't have the consulting services coming out at this point,
So
correct?
I guess the question is, how much are the consulting services?
But we already got rid of consultant services when we brought Wayne on.
Some of them,
Some
not
of
all of
them,
them.
correct.
Hybrid, we did not get rid of.
That's correct, and we can't, because if Wayne is out sick and we still need inspections, or if he goes on vacation and we still need inspections done, we still need to contract that out.
Okay, so I guess what we're asking, because this is a little bit of a twist and a surprise, is what are the cost savings, if anything, by bringing this in-house? So what did hybrid, what were the expenses associated with hybrid? And what are the additional duties that you can take away from CWA, and how will that really, decrease their contract versus putting it in an employee? I mean, I always prefer to have in-house, you have much more control and everything
Correct.
else. I think it's just a little bit of we didn't quite understand what was going on here,
Right.
so I think we need a comfort level that, if we're bringing on someone for 60, we're getting rid of
What are you getting for it?
$45,000 worth of
Correct.
contractual fees, which we would have paid for anyways.
So do you want to put this on hold until the May meeting, and we'll bring you back a better analysis?
Correct, exactly what Christine
Yeah.
says.
And
Just a brief comment, and that's,
You want
know,
the
a
job?
I tend to think like Steve does on this, is that adding another person should be looked at very carefully, and if you know that the demand for that person is going to remain the same over the long term, then it's cheaper than consultants. But we know that, that the amount of demands of this is because of the construction and the going on in the town, and part of our income is coming from building permits and fees, which may go away if that economy goes further down, as it will cycle again as interest rates go up. And consultants are much easier to adjust than a full-time position.
Good point.
What I did is I looked at the list, and we talked about, you're saying consulting, but we're really talking about contracts with like
Yes.
Chris Wayne and whatnot.
Correct.
So we've got a little bit of semantics there, but I went down this specific duties and responsibility for maintenance. We're talking about bringing in an extra person for 60 grand, but some of the duties that we have here, I mean, emptying the trash cans 3 times a week, sweeping floors, cleans restrooms and areas. These items that you have here, it seems to me that we would be much better off to contract those things out. I mean, Billy gets in the little mower here, and he drives it all the way down to the south end of town to cut 15 minutes of grass, and then he comes back. Why wouldn't we turn that over to Chris Wayne or another vendor that's in there, that's got the equipment, and has got the people to do that? Emptying trash cans, it takes Billy a couple of hours, 3 times a week, to drive a pickup truck down and go pick up the trash in each one of the public crossovers. I'm not particularly in favor of using contractors, but for some of these items, it's absolutely ridiculous for us to pay the salary and the benefits for somebody to empty trash cans. And so I just think when you look at this, take that into consideration and see what kind of rates we can get. And Chris Wayne is not the only contractor in town that we can deal with, and we might be able to get better rates somewhere else.
Okay.
Will do.
So I think I'm agreeing with you, which is
Wow.
probably the first time in a year.
Where's Jerry Lara? We need a picture. Okay, so I'm moving down the list, and I believe the next thing that moves to medium priority is AC Units Town Hall, 2 at 75. In other
Yes.
words, we okayed the high priorities with the
Right.
exceptions we just made.
Right.
So now we're at AC Town Hall medium priority, just give us input, Tracy and Wayne.
Wayne?
Yeah.
You need both of them, you need one next year, because it looks like we're gonna spend a lot of money on drainage.
Yeah, well, basically, we're fine with AC equipment currently. We just changed out quite a few units, and those are under warranty. I'm referring to units that are gonna be, just a shelf life of the units. The condensers are gonna be going because they're not coated with any salt corrosive treatment. So that's probably gonna go before your air handlers.
But
So-
can we do that? Can't we do that?
We can change out just that part of the equipment, provided that they're matching to the air handler.
No, but are they available that you could work on them? Because have you ever heard of like salt away for boats? I
Yes,
salt
yeah.
away my
Well, that's
air
just the thing.
conditioning units.
Especially that little
They
thing.
have it
Right.
wherein that the manufacturer, you can send away for the units to be done. The problem is, these units that I'm referring to, not the new ones that were just purchased, but the older ones, their shelf life is almost at the diminishing end anyway.
No, but I'm just saying you squirt it with a hose. I'm not saying even covering it, just do a little maintenance. If you get your maintenance guy, it's a little salt away blue bottle, you hook it to your hose and you just squirt it, and it takes the salt off the
Maintenance
unit.
has already started that program
okay.
after it was discussed a couple of years
Right.
ago.
Oh,
So as
okay.
long
It's
as
also
they're,
that-
as long as they're continuing with it, we're
Oils.
using salt.
Yeah.
So,
I have a
Okay.
comment, on this. So you got two units. I've noticed that since Tracy has taken over, she's turned the air off in her office because she's freezing to death, which is having an effect, the opposite effect on the admin staff in the front who are now dying of heat. And so what I'm saying is, let's buy one unit at $7,500 this year and get somebody to come in and do reduct work in the admin section up front so that the ladies that work up there can be comfortable also. So I think we need to do duct work in the front in order to be able to balance that air out with the.
Can't you just shut the vents? Isn't
No,
there-
they tried that.
So why don't we take, instead of 2 times 7,500, we'll put 7,500 into AC, and then you and Wayne figure out what to do with the 7,500.
that's fine.
Does that make everybody
That
happy?
works.
Go with that.
Yeah.
Okay, medium priority, door replacement. Apparently this isn't medium, this is a must-do because we're against code? ADA.
And EDA.
So that has to be done.
Well, it says low priority, so you're talking about
No,
80,000?
medium, door replacement,
Oh, I'm sorry, that
medium
first
priority.
one, okay.
Is it all the doors or just the front doors
Just
of the town hall?
front door and the police.
And, okay,
But I
right.
think, was it 66 for both? Oh, good.
Okay, so, but that needs to be switched to high priority. I
Right.
mean, if it's a compliance
And what
issue.
kind of doors are they putting on?
It needs to be impact rated, but it also has to have the panic bar mechanism for
Okay,
egress.
so it'll
like
be
this does.
doors like those or
Well,
similar?
we wanna look, obviously, we wanna keep the aesthetic look of the town, so we're.
Prestige door.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, seal coat and striping town hall parking lot. You know, I never look at this striping.
Yeah, everything's low priority. I think we already
All right.
swashed it off, didn't we?
Well, what we just said, we're accepting high priorities. Garage reconfigured is out. That's a big savings.
Yeah, so I think we can get rid of the parking lot too. Is that what we did?
Yep, I
Yep.
just did.
Okay.
New equipped police vehicle, apparently we need this, correct, chief?
We didn't have a priority on it.
We're trying to extend the life of our fleet.
Good.
No, I did not put a priority on it. This is a normal operating budget item, not truly a capital. The expectation is that if we don't budget for it and we need it, we're going to end up buying it anyway. My expectation is we will need one in the next year. We will try and push it out until the next fiscal year based upon the experience that we're having right now and the fact that our new cars are coming in extremely slowly. So we'll extend the life of those out. That's my
Well,
goal.
why don't we do this, if it's okay with everybody else? We'll put it on the budget and then we'll revisit it in round 2. Because it sounds like the chief's saying he might not need it in this next fiscal.
If you look at the capital justification memo I got, I'm trying
Yeah.
to avoid having to buy cars this year, but I will not guarantee that can't happen. It just depends upon usage and condition of the vehicles when we get to the point of the budget. We're trying to forecast out 9 to 12 months ahead of time.
Did
For
we
this,
not
it's
get
just
a new
difficult.
Yeah.
vehicle that was donated last year?
So we did.
Yeah.
This cycle is normally scheduled for 2 replacement vehicles. You'll notice that there's 1 in there.
So, by the way,
And
if-
because of that, we're trying, as I said, I'm trying to extend out the life cycle of the vehicles. and considering that in trade-ins and things like that and values as we get to when we need them. My hope is that I can tell you that I didn't have to spend that money and it can go back into your reserves.
Right, so why don't we strike it from the budget, and then if you need a car, then you'll come to us and we'll find the money from somewhere at that point in time in fiscal 20. How's that?
Comfortable with that?
All-terrain vehicle to replace 2016.
I don't believe that that's something that the town clerk finance director is comfortable with.
No?
I believe she would rather you budget it
All right, all right.
and then
We'll
not
budget
use
it,
the
and
money.
then when we get down into the final, what are we nixing, we'll worry about
Right,
then.
yeah,
How's that?
that's what I would do.
7,000 for all-terrain vehicle. I think with the increased population of Boynton, we have to have this vehicle.
We have two of them. This is at the end of life cycle. We have already rebuilt this from the ground up. Billy Armstrong. Reason why you need to give him the raise.
He doesn't
Okay.
have
That's
Took it
impressive.
upon himself, along with Lieutenant Jones, to go out there and buy the parts and do this to save you from having to buy one early because they rust out. It is an essential item for the way we do business with the town.
Do you salt away them too? No, I'm not kidding. I salt away my truck. I salt away everything.
So not only do we rinse them and do that, we have a program where we actually, because the salt sticking, the salt air sticking to your truck
Right.
is different than driving on the beach and sucking up the salt infused sand. So we use an unenvironmentally friendly method of preservation that I will not tell you what it is.
Don't you do the salt away and then you do the cleaner?
Okay, so,
that-
body worn camera system.
Did you have a consensus on the ATV? Was it a yes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you guys
Yeah,
agreed.
okay.
Body worn, camera systems, as the chief knows, I'm not a fan of this, but the chief seems to want it, so. it's with-
I'm gonna really blow you away. I'm gonna agree with you for the second
Oh,
time. I see.
Will you take me
from-
out for a beer afterwards?
Yeah, as long as we don't talk about anything. My observation is, in being somewhat of a news junkie, is the body-worn cameras seem to be more of a detriment to the police officers than they are an advantage. And, you know, we're just a small community. I just don't see spending $20,000 for the body-worn cameras. That's purely my personal opinion.
Can we hear from you, chief, about,
I would like to hear all of your concerns, and then I would be more than happy to address this if you don't mind.
I told you, my, it's not a concern, it's my feel.
I understand.
It's the feel of Ocean Ridge. When the police is chatting with a citizen, or the citizen offers the police chief, not the police chief, but the police officer, a cookie or candy, there's a community sense to it, and someone rather bring in the camera in between that seems to make things more sterile, I guess I'd say.
I'm not going to disagree with anything that anybody up there has said, at all.
Christine?
Go ahead. No, my issue is I think it's all being predicated on one issue, and like 99.99% we never really need it. And I hate to spend money on an issue just to solve one little problem that's in the past that probably will never happen again. And besides the 20 grand, it's forever, you know. I think you had 60 grand over a 5-year period. That's a lot of money to solve 0.1110% of an issue, so that's my take on it.
what do you think, Christine?
Well, we already got 3, we don't want to hear from you guys. I'm only kidding, you can change
Okay,
my mind.
So, my input on this is that I know Big Brother's watching and where's my phone, listening to everything we're saying, but I kind of understand and get it because we aren't Ocean Ridge 1964 when I was taking my training wheels off up there. It's changing, and we're all talking about the influence of Boynton, which is not necessarily always going to be positive for us. So our force here is going to be dealing with those non-lovely Ocean Ridge guys that are looking for a cookie from their dog. So I'm thinking future-wise, I'm not really so much against it. So that's why I was going to kind of listen to what you might have to say about that. Next.
You know, I can see both sides. I
Right.
mean, I really can. And,
Exactly.
you know, I'm the poster child for talking about the influences of increased density and intensity on the other side of the bridge. And if this is a tool that we need, not unlike a license plate recognition camera, I would just like to see it in balance with maybe some of the other initiatives that you might need beyond a car. You might say, you know what, 2 extra cameras would do a little bit better than something like this, and this is year 2, or, I just like to see kind of in comparison, but,
Other
the
options.
floor is yours.
I have purposely not presented you with recommendations for increased technology in this budget. I have purposely not recommended what I normally would for the regular maintenance and operation of the police department based upon staff discussions of what you have to spend your money on. And when I say have to spend your money on, fire hydrants is a perfect example. You have to spend money on fire hydrants. We have to protect people's homes from fire, and that's absolutely important. And we can do our job and run the police department in the manner which it's being done like this. However, body-worn cameras have been brought forward by a former commission and then thrown out for a specific incident. I recognize that. I understand that there are probably 90% of the people in the town of Ocean Ridge who believe that they don't need to be recorded, that they are civil, respectful, and that the officers are that way in return. There is, however, the evidentiary value when we present cases to the state attorney's office is becoming more common, that body-worn cameras or in-car cameras are the norm. We don't have to follow that norm. However, there are good points to having it so that we can make our cases perhaps at a lesser cost, because maybe we don't have to go to court and we don't have to expend an inordinate amount of overtime on something. That's one of the positives. The other issue that has come to my attention, and I had a rather lengthy meeting with another group of residents this morning, is this air of distrust of the police in the town of Ocean Ridge. I continue to hear that. I continue to hear that the town loves its police department and wants it to continue. I hear that there is an air of distrust and nobody will talk to it. And I have been receiving complaints against officers from members of the community that I believe probably are directed at a specific group of officers for whatever reason. And I don't have the means to either investigate, confirm, or deny. Those are he said, she said. And that is having a negative impact on the ability for me, as your chief, to provide you with what you want and run your police department professionally. I believe that this, unfortunately, is probably the only answer I have for you on this incident right now. Do I believe that it will show that the officers are always right? No. Do I believe that it will show that the citizen making the complaint that the officer was rude or acted inappropriately will always be right? No. But it's another tool to use to hopefully be able to counter the attack that I am feeling and that the officers are feeling at this point from certain individuals in the community. I recognize that there probably is not a large need for us to record you on a daily basis. However, I have never felt that it is more necessary than now. To give you an idea, I actually asked the officers indirectly whether they wanted body-worn cameras so that I made sure that I didn't present something to you that had a negative impact on your organization. And unanimously, they all said they felt that it was necessary. That's very disturbing in this town, but it's the fact. I understand the cost of it. If we choose not to do it, I expect that the cost is that we will continue to go down this road. That's your decision. I hope that you trust me enough that I'm doing what I can to address those external forces the best I can, but I'm continuing to hear that barrage of criticism, and I don't have any way to counter it, other than my word and your backup. And it's becoming more and more difficult for me to do that without public backing or without some way to say, here is the definitive proof. Yes, you are correct, and we will take disciplinary action against the employee, or no, you are not correct, and here's our finding. I hate to get into that in small town because everybody tells me they want that small town feel, and we're trying to give it, but I think that at this point in time, based upon what my officers are telling me and what many residents are telling me, I would say that the officers are not in a place of well-being, feeling well and truly safe in their job, which makes it difficult for us to actually police as well as we can for you. I've talked to, I think, all of you individually, and I have explained to you that my philosophy is that if I have good employees that feel valued, that they will go out of their way to help you and to do the best they can for you, and that's a win-win situation. And we are, right now, I believe, unfortunately, at a breaking point, and I need to come up with a solution to fix the problem. This may not be it. If you have a better one, please let me know. And you do not have to make a decision today on this, but this is my budget presentation, and this is one of the most important parts of it.
Well, thank you for your candor and
I'm sorry I had to say that publicly.
Yeah, I think we're all sorry, but I'm really happy that you brought it up and we're so candid about the situation.
It's disturbing.
It's disturbing. So, and as far as solutions go, I mean, body cameras could be one solution, but maybe we should also start some form of communication or something. Because if that distrust is growing, and you know it better than we would, because.
I don't know where that's coming from.
It's coming, well, the chief's hearing it.
Yeah.
So why don't we put the cameras back in, and then we can all think about this, maybe talk to various citizens in town and see if,
I like your idea, because I think
I think it's fair.
for $1,000 per employee, what we're doing is we're giving a vote of confidence back. And I want that message to be very loud and clear, because the small faction in this town that is being divisive and disruptive, it's shameful. I'm embarrassed by it, and it should not be affecting morale. I apologize.
those are kind of harsh words, Christine. I think
They are.
it is, from what I've talked to the chief, it is kind of, it's across town in different areas, different people.
No, I didn't point out one
Yeah.
area.
Okay, all right.
So
we'll
we're
leave
putting it back, we're putting it back on the table.
Yes, right. The way the process works, we have like 4 or 5 of
Right.
these, and then in the end, we have to do something difficult.
And,
Yes.
and with all due respect, I understand the necessity to look at money.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Jerry Lauer, 2 Harbor Drive. I'm glad you're putting it back into the budget. I would actually ask you to accelerate it, get it into current spending, and help the department contend with this issue today, this week, this month, not 6 months or a year from now.
So
Thank
do you have any other additional solutions?
I am not opposed to body cameras.
Right, yeah, I get that.
My interaction with police has nothing to do with the gun on their hip, the taser on their hip, or the camera on their chest.
Yeah.
A police officer, male, female, comes up to you with respect. The police department in this town wave at the residents. They engage them. It is, you expect to perceive them as your neighborhood police. We're really fortunate. Giving them this is just another tool, just like a can of mace, a nightstick, whatever it is that helps them do their job. Spend the money now.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, so we have it back on, and now we're moving down.
Do we want to have any consideration to what was just expressed, though? I mean, we did accelerate some salary pieces and some hiring pieces.
Well, we have to budget it, you mean you're trying to put it in this year's budget, that's what you're.
I'm not opposed to you giving it some consideration. Our next budget
That's what
meeting
I-
is very shortly from now, and perhaps that will be now that the discussion is out in the public.
Right.
Perhaps there may be some greater discussion and you can get some input from your constituents, rather than relying on me. I happen to agree with Mr. Lauer, and no, we did not talk about this before. I haven't told anybody about this.
Okay.
I do think it's very healthy.
Yeah.
What's occurring right now. You know what I mean? In
Speaking
public.
out, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, salary survey and investment in personnel. You're doing this yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the salary survey myself. I just wanna know if you want me to go ahead and do it, because it is a lot of work, so if you,
Depending on the budget, there might
Yeah.
be no rush.
yeah. So if you want me to continue, I will, and,
Yeah,
we'll
not
bring you
at the
the.
exclusion of your other duties, because obviously
Yeah,
right now.
definitely.
Right. Vulnerability study, I assume this is Dawn.
Yeah, this goes directly to Peter Berlin's point that he made earlier in the meeting about getting Ocean Ridge on board for resilience and sustainability for catastrophic storms. This is a survey that I've been working on for the last 2 years. I've got more information that I'll pass out for you to read. If anything, you want to put it on hold and we'll discuss it more. But I've got information on the website. There's 11 communities that are participating in this program right now. And we're dividing the cost up. The 23,000 that we have is for our portion of having the consultant come in and do the vulnerability study for Ocean Ridge. And it would be the same engineering firm that would be working on Boynton, Delray, Gulfstream, Highland Beach, Hypoluxo, and Lantana. So the advantage is that you have one consulting, one engineering firm that would come in and be evaluating all of the communities under the same microscope. And it's something that is being mandated by the state, and it's also in our, excuse me, in our comprehensive plan that we've been planning for. So, I mean, there's some more information there, Steve, that you can read through. That memo that is authored by myself and by the steering committee for the CRP group. And we're at the point now, we've had this study put together by a grant. We're also, everything that we're doing now, working with Carrillo and working with the Harvard University, has been paid for by a grant. We're also now looking at trying to get a grant next year that if we can get that, will reduce the cost of the 23,000 that is ours right now, could possibly reduce that cost.
So a couple of commissioners have mentioned that they have to leave at 5:15, so hopefully we can finish
Can I
that.
ask some questions though, real
Yeah.
quick?
Oh, no,
And do it quick,
definitely
and you
wanna
don't have to
change
give the answer now, but at the next meeting when we go into discussions, what are we gonna learn more than, Lisa hasn't done with all the drainage and all that kind of stuff? Have all the towns put it in their budget and approved it already? Why isn't Manalapan in the group? And then, how are we gonna mitigate the negative impact of us telling these are the places you don't wanna live, similar to what happened in Miami, where Miami put their study together and then the houses in those areas just plummeted in value. So they're just kind of the things that I'd like to
Fine.
talk about.
Well,
at the
you can
meeting.
read through this
Okay.
information and come back at the next meeting and we'll talk about it.
Thank you.
I did have a question. I thought that in last year's budget, we had budgeted $20,000 for a vulnerability study. I think we did.
No, I thought we nixed that.
I think,
thought we
I
did.
think we've been talking about doing it.
did it get,
No,
stricken from
on an
last year's budget?
ongoing basis, Ingenuity has been providing us with
No,
vulnerable areas, not necessarily identical
I'm
to
talking
vulnerability.
specifically about last year's budget, because I know it was an ask, and I can't remember, I thought it was left in and we just hadn't done it yet.
I will check that for you.
Could you, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm very much in support of it, and the one thing that I like about this is that all of the municipalities are being done by one group, so there's not comparison of apples and oranges.
Right.
And there's that continuity, because truthfully, unless everybody kind of starts to think about it in its totality, if one town does something and the next one doesn't, it's kind of like the mosquitoes and the iguanas, it really doesn't make any, you're kind of not getting it going.
I think my whole problem with it is, we have Ingenuity, and maybe I don't understand, so I'll have to read this.
Yeah.
We have Ingenuity doing all this already for the last 20-odd years, and proactively trying to get us to do some of these items, which we refused to do for 10 years, you know?
Well,
But now we're suddenly
I will
doing
give
it.
you that we have been doing things that will help with this, but what they're looking at now would be like things like seawalls. The seawalls between Broward and coming into Palm Beach County. You're looking at seawalls between each of the municipalities up here. You're looking at infrastructure where we can increase drainage collection for the detention pond. Gulfstream has a lot more than we do. We also have trying to mitigate the damage to the seawalls with the mangroves, the
Okay,
rocks.
so we'll leave it in the
Just-
budget.
Yeah.
Everyone will read it, and then we shall
Please.
talk to our town engineer and well, and see if this totally overlaps or if it's a separate issue, but we don't know until we read it.
Okay.
How's that? Okay.
And you can
initial-
also look on the website.
Yeah, I
I've
saw
got
that.
2 years worth of stuff that I've been doing.
Thank you.
Initial equipment and training to implement EMT program. This is Christine's biggie. Let me just, before you talk about that, Christine, crosswalk installation, have we covered everything else? No,
Anna
pretty
Street
close.
runoff repairs, you haven't decided on that one yet.
Which one?
No,
Anna
we
Street
put
runoff-
that hold.
On hold?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we got signage is still.
We got signage is the only thing left. So we have EMT, crosswalk, and signage.
Yep.
So you're up.
All right, I think actually, I will give you a little bit of background, but I think my net is I'm gonna probably respectfully ask that this be withdrawn from this year's upcoming budget because of other pressing issues. I still feel very strongly that this is something that we need to address, and it goes back to the heart of, I think, a lot of what we have discussed in terms of the increased traffic, the increased density, the increased potential for delayed emergency response times. And one of the ways that we could go about it, in 2016, Gulfstream led a multi-municipal, I think it was 7 or 8 town study to see if there was the appetite or the financial capability to have a fire EMT station on the barrier island. It turned out it was cost prohibitive, and what the other part of the outcome is Highland Beach decided to go with Delray. South Palm decided to stay with Manalapan. They decided to drop out of the study. So it basically left us three municipalities, Briny, Ocean Ridge, and Gulfstream, and part of the county pocket. And those 3 townships could not sustain building a fire EMT station. Second thing that was looked at was a roving vehicle. There didn't seem to be much of an appetite for that. So in discussions with both chief and lieutenant, the lieutenant, you may not know, is actually EMT certified. And it turns out we have another officer also, and we started talking about, since they are categorically the first responder there when we get a 911 call, they're there in less than a minute, could we give them additional training, or should we provide them additional training in terms of life support training that would be above and beyond the regular 40-hour first aid training that they already have? And basically it would allow them to administer drugs, clear a pipeway. It is the difference between having an AA and maybe a graduate student level piece. Anyways, I just don't think, I think that this probably will not, unfortunately, get the traction nor the time and attention it deserves until we have a tragedy. That's usually how things like this work. and I'm trying to stave that off, but I think considering all the other infrastructure considerations that we have right now, I just want people to be aware of it, to know that it is an option. It is something that would have to be done for the entire police force. It is not something that you could just train part of your police force. It does require recertification every 2 years. But the level of service that it would give us would be phenomenal, and it actually would give us a competitive edge, I think, in things like regaining contracts with other municipalities like Briney and other things like that, so. A lot of research has been done to it, and I don't want to throw it totally out the water. but-
Lieutenant Jones has done a fabulous job with this project.
Yes.
He has the knowledge and expertise to lead us through it. He's made contact with Boynton because we have to have a medical director to do this. Boynton Fire Chief and the county medical director, who is the Boynton medical director, have agreed to it. So the estimated costs are exactly that, the training cost to get everybody up on board, and then the minor equipment costs, and I call them minor because you have, if you didn't see there's some other things in my budget presentation that I'd like to make you aware of. One of them is $12,000 for replacement AEDs. We already have some of these things in place, but they're aging out, and we have to keep them active because that's something that if your heart stops, you need it. So the reason for not piecemealing it, and Mr. Hathis and I have spoken at length about this, is that I don't want to be the guy that has the heart attack when she's working when she's the EMT and she's not working. Okay, I want that level of service to be the same, and I think that it makes the program work because generally, as all of you know, if you fall down, 2 police officers will show up, and then you have that whole thing there. So I agree the cost is high, and I agree that we have a lot of other things on our plate, so I'm not upset with your request to withdraw. However, I think that it needs to be something that is seriously considered for the town of
So,
Ocean Ridge.
Tracy, can you put it in the tickle file for next year?
Yes.
Because hopefully we'll have
Our infrastructure costs under control.
crosstalk installation A1A. The little footnote says $20,000. Is that, this is the one at Crown Colony. The study was done and
Do we have the
it's
results back
recommended.
yet from,
Yeah, recommended.
Yes, we do have the report back.
Recommended.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So
It just came in.
is the 20,000 the accurate number? Because that's 20,000 for the hardware, so to speak?
That's an estimate. It could be a little higher than that as well, based on the recommendation from the traffic study.
I don't,
And who makes those recommendations, FDOT, or do we?
No, the traffic engineer made the recommendation, and you will receive the report, and
Okay.
then.
So he basically tells us what we need to do as far as
Correct.
the foot stop on the other side.
Exactly,
So-
sidewalks, curbing,
okay.
signposts.
So that's in the budget, right?
No, the study was in the budget, the $4,000 study,
No,
but now.
it's
we-
20. That's
We're
fine.
Oh,
asking,
the
we're
20,
asking
yes,
for money
that's
in the
it.
budget, so that's a decision you need to make. Do you want to go with the recommendation and
I
fund
think
it,
if the
or?
DOT recommends, we need this for safety, and then we don't do it, and somebody from Crown Colony gets hit, that would be a horrible thing.
Have we addressed the issue there? Didn't we have some pushback from another community?
from Fayette,
Right, so
yeah.
have we addressed how maybe to smooth the way, or, you know? is
When
there-
they came back recommending.
I know, so,
We won't have to put out a bulletin.
yeah, that's gonna be a big to-do, right? We're not-
So
we're not
why don't we
getting
put it on the
I
May
believe,
town
I
meeting?
believe that you all need to get, this. The study came back, we got the final signed copy yesterday afternoon. I believe that it would be in your best interest to read that study, and especially the memo that I wrote to Tracy explaining where you need to read in that study.
Okay.
Right.
And you will better be able to make a decision, especially since there is already controversy on
That's what
putting
I'm
it there.
So just
Okay.
following suit with everything else, would we consider this medium priority or high priority? Or low?
I'd call it high.
I believe you need to read the study
Yes,
before you make that
So-
decision.
Some information there
I'm
for
gonna
us to
leave it in
say.
the budget and tentatively put it on the agenda, not the budget item, the crosswalk on the agenda for May's regular meeting.
Yes.
How's that?
That may
After
be, a
we've read the
discussion for
study.
that on may be your best decision.
And when will we get a copy of the study?
You will get it with your package materials, or you can get it sooner if you'd like.
Yeah, she just got it.
So we have 2 minutes.
Is there not?
I have
a,
one thing that I need to bring up before. I would be remiss if I do not do this, and unfortunately, be in bad favor with my employees. You've addressed all of the other civilian employees, with the exception of very few, in this meeting and discussion. And there is a proposal in for next year's fiscal budget to address the police lieutenants who were not addressed in last year's union negotiation, this year's budget discussion today, nor at any other time. And I would ask that you respectfully look at that and determine if we could do that earlier, as you have with all of the other employees, or if we need to wait.
So
and
has
consider.
other commissioners seen this? This is towards the tail end of the document. It's a $6,500 increase for each of the lieutenants to bring them up to,
Oh, right.
and 76, and simultaneously sets a maximum
So
for
my
that
recommendation includes a minimum and a maximum, setting a salary range for that position. And since you discussed other people that were not included in this packet, I feel it's necessary just to bring that to your attention, so that you're aware of it, and if you choose to discuss it, that's yours. If not, at least please consider it.
Here, you need a copy.
It should be at the end of my, right at the end of mine.
Because we've got the,
Don's.
yeah, we've
And the
got,
salary survey is
Okay.
a 2016-17 salary survey for that range.
Chief, I also
before
saw
the hour,
that
right
the dispatchers, there was a disparity in dispatcher
There is a
compensation.
considerable disparity in dispatch. Prior to some other issues coming forward to the commission, I asked for a salary survey. I have that. I've not addressed it. If you wish to address that,
Well, isn't
as
it,
part of this, and if we can,
I don't want to, because
And if you
they're
can, then that's your
unionizing, so it's
No,
a
they're
waste of conversation.
Dispatchers are not part of,
They unionize.
oh, I understand that part, yes,
There's no-
okay.
we don't-
They- but
so,
that's
so,
gonna take-
so
that's
I'm
gonna be a
bringing
year
you,
or
I'm
two down
bringing you
road.
the group of employees
that are not-
that are like the ones you discussed earlier. How's that?
yeah, there you go.
Okay?
So I think not only for parity, but for some of the candid conversations that we had, I would be in full support of making the changes that you're recommending.
So what is being recommended, just so the commissioners understand, I recommend a compression adjustment to the police lieutenants of $6,500 each. In other words, their salary is being raised by $6,500. Everybody okay with it?
I agree.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that's fine. So if we need a record of this, it was unanimous.
And that'll
Yeah,
become
and
effective.
that's a high priority.
Effective immediately?
Effective immediately.
And then
Okay.
that will be removed from your budget line item that we will prepare for you.
Okay.
Lieutenant
Thank you.
Jones is buying beer after.
I hope
You're
so.
supposed to buy me a beer.
He's frugal, so
You may be being Schlitz malt liquor.
Okay, one last item, street sign replacement program. Apparently our signs are aging. We also need to put a couple signs on the beach.
Right.
Um,
Take a look at new signs, right?
Okay, here you go. And in our pros and our cons have already left us as far as the beach signs are concerned. So I brought this before when Jamie was here some time ago. It is just merely an example, but what I was shooting
War
for.
and peace on the side?
Huh?
What? So we had this problem down at Beachway.
Well, this sign, it goes to the education.
I know exactly.
And it
what you're
says, just so those that are remaining, it says, warning, end of Oceanfront Park. This sign is meant for here at this part. No lifeguard beyond this point. Please note, property beyond this point and above the daily mean high tide watermark or dry sand is private property and should not be used by non-resident beach parties or sunbathing, sporting activities, or erecting shade umbrellas or tents. We appreciate your cooperation in preserving the rights of our residents and welcome you to enjoy the beach east of the daily mean high tide line. And then underneath that, it says no dogs allowed and help protect endangered sea
No
turtles.
alcohol.
Please don't burn.
Cars off.
This also runs into the problem that we have with signage, size of signs and so on and so forth. But I just
No, I
put
get the
this
concept.
in.
So basically, we're okay on $13,000 for street sign replacement program in budget hearing number 1, and then
For our
budget
replacements,
hearing
right?
2, 3, we'll find out.
We'll talk, yeah, talk
I would,
about
I would recommend that you authorize and keep that in the budget because it is street signs, it is stop signs, it is no parking signs, it may be
What
beach
I-
signs, it may be any
The
kind
other
of sign.
part of the signage is that when Jamie and I last talked about this, there was some discussion about not replacing the signage that we have now, which are the custom-made signs and so on and so forth. And I think, that those signs and whatnot are part of the quality of Ocean Ridge.
Oh, yeah, we're not changing.
And so I would really like to keep that type of signage.
I would not disagree with you in the least. Understand, those signs are more expensive
Understand
than
that.
the standard metal tape-on sign, and $13,000 will probably go a long way to start a program that you may want to do over the course of 2 or 3 years.
All right, so
So
one
do-
little note on
Do
signs.
we have consensus on that, or
Yes,
no?
yes, yes.
Okay, and we have one more item, maintenance of town facilities, painting, replacing the roof. We have to start saving now over the next few years so that when things start to fail or things need to be maintained, we have the money to do so.
I think we have to do that. I mean, this is, the character of our town is set by how we look as a town
But by
hall.
using your low priority law.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's low priority. I wouldn't put it as low
Well,
priority.
is this really low priority, or you're just saying, we're not gonna spend the money, we're just gonna put it aside?
It's low priority based on other requests, but it's still a needed item.
Okay, great, we'll leave it in.
Okay.
Okay, so for next meeting, unless somebody's got something else to say about this, for next meeting, Tracy, if we can group these perhaps. I realize
sure.
it's gonna mess up your spreadsheet.
No, it's fine.
But it's very difficult to go from here to here or vice versa.
Yep, absolutely.
So we have a better idea. We know what drainage is. We know what sewerage is.
Yep.
We know what our other large items are. Maybe there's subsets on that, police.
Okay.
And then that'll make our lives easier.
And again, high priority and then high and medium, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
High
And you'll
and
see your
high.
entire budget at the May 30th. You'll, not only this, but you're gonna see your entire budget.
Thank you for all
Okay.
the work that you all
Yeah,
put
thank
into
you,
it,
really.
And if anybody has any suggestions or ideas, don't hesitate to help us here. The only professional accountant we have is Phil Bessler.
You'll take all
And we
calls.
need help, right?
Remaining citizens.
Meeting adjourned?
Meeting adjourned. Take care, Christine.
Good weekend.